Okay, so this is the community conversation number 2. If you were here for the last one, what this is we will be going over this topic list that I have. It has, excuse me, a bunch of information regarding the developer conference that was held back on August 24th. So what happened then is they revealed that basically this current level cap was, to put it in simple terms, not good. There was a lot of issues with the growth system. The custom epic gearing system was deemed as a main issue with why they had low retention for new players and a lot of frustration with the current level cap. So they decided that they're going to change all of their plans and give us a new level cap early, quote unquote early, a lot sooner than they planned, and also change a lot of things. We have actually gotten a preview of Gravity Falls, which is going to be the next level cap for us. I will be showing that as well. It is this document here, translated by Half Mango. Thank you, Half Mango. I don't know if you're here. I can see everyone's here, but thank Half Mango for doing this. So we have this. I'm going to go through it as it comes in relation to the things I will be talking about. So if you wish to look at it yourself, I will put the link into the chat, and so you can go and look at the document yourself there. But I will not be going over it completely. There's certain things that are different from what we're talking about. Primarily what we're going to be talking about are these dungeon changes and really the gear and farming changes as well. So once we get to that, I will bring it up. So all these things, including the other changes, because this does, again, result with a skill functionality system. I guess briefly I can say I'm not going to talk about the AI-based DPS analysis. That's just a difficult thing to kind of talk about, but it's there. They've done it. Woo. But that's not really something I'm going to go too much in detail about. So either way, we're going to go back to the main topic list. Please let me know if you can actually see it. If you can't, I need to fix that. And also, also, you can, if you wish to speak up, you can just, there should be a button that says to request to speak. This whole point of this is not for me to be talking all on my own. It's for you to also include your voice in this conversation. I do want to kind of express that one of the things that has been a common complaint from our community is that it doesn't feel like we ever get listened to by Neopol or Nexon or really anyone who's in charge, because we're a small community. We are a small community. That's not that's simply the truth, but we do have a presence in the game, and it needs to be understood that if we say something, we can make them listen. One of the things I put in the Reddit post for this is that there was a recent interview from the Tokyo Game Show where the Nexon Games president and the vice president of Nexon, what was it? Nexon Korea said that the kind of thing they're looking for now is player feedback. This is the kind of way we give them player feedback. And if Nexon wants it, we give it to them. That's the best way to get them to listen to us. So this is one of the ways that we can do it. This is the way that I am trying to do it. We'll try to see if we can get other ways to do it. But this is basically, if they want feedback, we'll give them feedback. So again, if at any point you want to talk or if you want to type something out, if you want to directly talk, just raise your hand and I'll add you onto this speaker. Add you as a speaker. Blah, words. You're also, if you're not comfortable talking, you can type it out in the chat. I will respond to things that happen in the chat. But I did that look that? But I generally would like people to speak. The chat, I do have the chat. It should be in my window. Yes, the chat is recorded, so I'll have that there. I will also post the recording. It will just go raw onto YouTube, and I'll just post the recording as soon as I can get it. But yeah, everything. I'm trying to get everything recorded here. So yeah. So, since you joined first, hello, Freecom.
My mic wasn't even on this whole time. God damn it. I
That's
don't know how the stages thing work. I've never used it.
the couple of times I've used it. It's been kind of interesting, but I kind of like using it for this kind of thing. Especially since apparently the stage limit is 300 people. So like, cool. But we've never gotten close to like 50 or 30. So yeah, there's still time. But did you want to say anything to start?
No, I mean, I was just testing how this thing works. But
Okay.
I mean, does it
Um,
like, do I get like removed from speaker if I don't talk for too long, or like I've never used this?
no, I actually believe. Do I have control of speakers who can and cannot be
It's
speakers?
like honestly, like
Nope.
going into this, I thought this was gonna be like everyone has an open mic, but
Oh no,
I
no.
thought it was gonna be that civil, but I guess
It's
it's not.
not that. I actually can't kick you out from being a speaker.
I mean, if
You
you need
can
me
leave
to,
if
I
you
can
want.
mute at any point.
Yeah. Apparently, I can disconnect you. That might be because I'm a mod. I'm not gonna touch that. But yeah, you can come in and out if you want. Uh, but you do have to ask to be a speaker. But since we're going on from here, so we'll begin, and we'll start with the equipment system. So again, what this is for as people come in, this is kind of going over the issues that this level cap has had, talking about them, and then kind of getting everyone's opinion on what they think about that system and how it has changed if we have gotten a preview of that change. So what we're going to start with is the option level growth system. This topic list that I created is just the things that I kind of thought of when I was putting this together about what did work and what didn't work with these systems, based on the dev notice and what other people have been saying. So none of this is really like my own opinion. It's what I've gathered from hearing people talk about this. So for the option level growth system, what did work is it provided a visible color coded progression path. As your option levels got higher, the color changed. This is just really simple and easy. It's That's a good thing. That's kind of it. And then there's throughout the level cap, access to the growth material has been fairly easy. But there's been a lot of problems with this system, namely that it was just unbelievably too expensive. If you were here in the beginning of the level cap, this is up to Seon, so pre-Seon. Getting growth materials was pretty slow, and because of the cost of it, you couldn't actually grow multiple characters unless you were willing to drop a ton of gold. It became kind of just it was just your decision was, do you want to grow a character or do you want to just like get the materials? Are you gonna say something? Freecom.
Oh no, sorry.
Okay.
I was just coughing.
So and so uh the amount of material needed to grow levels and not match the amount of power felt by growing gear. It hasn't been at any point in time an easy system to understand or explain, and with it being tied to gear, that meant that item enhancement, amps, and enchants were difficult to move across gear because they were on two separate systems. The chat is recorded. I'm recording this with OBS, so in my OBS window, it does include the chat as it's scrolling. It's just recording the window in the speaker list and the audience.
Yeah, I got something I want to say about that.
Go
Like
ahead.
not the OBS thing, but like this growth being hard. Like the people who were saying this, like how many characters were they running? Because like
I
I feel like, oh sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Because it's like I'm a self-proclaimed like casual of this game, so like I run like I can count the number of characters I actually gear on like one hand. So I never had this problem before they made growth free. So like I don't know where this sentiment is coming from that growth is like particularly hard.
That is right. This is majority of the opinions came by the KR populace. What I have heard, and it's been over a year since we kind of talked about this, or since this was kind of an issue because again, this is pre-Seon. I was
Hmm.
trying to grow like I think it was 6 characters. Personally, trying to grow 6 characters at once. I couldn't do it. It was a huge expense each week just trying to get the materials. It was huge expense in gold trying to get the growth materials, and I felt like I wasn't making the right kind of upgrades, or I wasn't being like efficient with my upgrades because it was just it was just so costly. I have heard from other people that it was just kind of annoying that it was like they couldn't really play all the characters they wanted to. But that's just one thing that I remember hearing about it at least at the early point before the entire cost of it was taken away.
Hmm.
Yes, Anne brings up a good point. I'm going to get to the chat. I just saw that it was uh, coming through. Anne brings up a good point that if you had limited amount of time to play, it was hard to grow multiple characters. That is true. Even though like one of the things with this level cap was they made it a little bit easier for you to be able to choose what you're doing throughout the week because of the play point system, which was removed. It was still a little bit difficult in actually managing time for growing characters. Let's see. Sage is saying, joined a few months after Seance update, so they were pushing around 8 characters. Never really feel bad being perpetually behind in Girim because of the option level system. Yeah, it wasn't the option level system was a little bit different from what it was from where it became now or post Seon release. But before you couldn't really do 8. I mean, you could, but it was extremely expensive. Afro wasn't hard, but did notice that even after running everything gave you a massive heat, it always felt like it wasn't enough. Growing as free to play is super fucking slow. Yes. Also, do not worry about language. You can use whatever language you want. Yeah, it was. I definitely saw the complaints from free to play players that it was difficult and slow. You couldn't buy these materials. Let's just say like in the terms of like free to play to versus people who pay. It was just if you had more access to gold, it was easier to grow characters, but it was never something that felt like it was a good thing to spend gold on. Yeah, you still the upgrade from 105 to 110 is still pretty expensive across characters. Early on, when Pale Mist was very uh, limited in how much a character could get it at one time, not easy to be able to upgrade an entire character to Seon. I think it took even like a couple of my characters 2 weeks to be able to get the Seon upgrades because of the Pale Mist thing.
Well, I don't know if I did something right then this cap because I'm like, it's just I didn't realize that the growth was like I don't play a lot per se, so it's like I didn't even realize that this was like a huge deal even pre-say on. So
Yeah, Des is making a good point that it's a common thing in DFO that we get the quality of life we should really have at the beginning of the cap close to the mid or end point where it's not really as valuable. It's just nice to have at that point.
mhm.
I think the Saiyan upgrade is 250k per item or per piece of gear. So across 11 pieces, that's 2.7 mil. Yeah. For fame, one of the biggest issues with fame is there's always gonna be an invisible goalpost that you have to reach. Yeah. The weapon. I mean, when the weapon had option levels, it was also included in gear. It's just weapon is kind of uh, its own issue. Um, yeah, it's 3 mil to upgrade to Scion and completely. Yeah, weapons were their own issue because we have just the weapon stopped at 40. Um, Just before Scion, weapons were just like gear. You upgrade them to the same level. I'll let more people talk for a little bit. Fame gaining content killed a lot of the community in this camp. Either grind or die, get left behind. Yes and no. The issue with fame gates is that what they were trying it's what they were trying to do and what necessarily didn't work. What they were trying to do is make it so that when people got to a certain fame level and got to a certain power level, they could then do more difficult content and actually feel like the power that they gained. Introducing my cat. And the power that they gained actually felt like God damn it, kitty. Actually, I lost my trail of thought. The power that you gain from having your option levels increased, you wanted to feel that, and having this fame gating kind of allowed that to happen in a sense, but it just didn't work out the way that it wanted to.
I mean, the way I saw it is just it ended up being uh, a more exaggerated version of what was it called, Exorcism, like way back when, just without the stat penalty for not having the Cutline.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that version because you could still go into content. It was just much, much more difficult. Um, I,
Yeah,
I think I knew someone who tried to just run content with lower exorcism, and it wasn't like it was impossible. It was just there's no real benefit to doing so.
mm. I mean, from what I understand, the reason why it's a hard cut line now is because to like it was like Neopol's attempt to kill off cells or something like that.
They attempted to do that when they made exorcism back in the day. You had to have the exorcism to enter the dungeon. Um,
Mm,
so you had to have the exorcism to enter the dungeon in the first place. So you couldn't like just sandbag and be brought in.
mm,
If you like had your gear raised up and then someone you were carrying, wanted you to just drop all gear so that you were easy to kill in the event they were doing something where the bosses have some kind of mechanic, you lowering your exorcism would make the bosses harder. So they did away with that. I don't know if their intent with the fame system was to stop cells because
I mean, that's just a rumor I heard, so don't
it
take what I say at face value.
right it doesn't. It doesn't. People still will buy cells if the cells are available.
Mm,
That isn't a part of this conversation. It can be if people want it to be, but cells are a whole different mess. At the very least, of what I can say is that if the game has content that people can sell, they are going to sell it because it is an option and it's a challenge for certain people. It's also an option for people who just either don't have the time or don't have the ability to play at the same level as the people who are selling. So it's purely an option that's available. I know some people don't like it, but it's not part of this conversation at the moment. Sorry.
well, I guess I guess if I'm derailing the conversation, let me take it back to fame then. And I'm sure there's people here who know what I do on DFO.
Right.
So I take a lot of people that are like literally cut line, give them a chance to actually, you know, use their skill, I guess, like their personal skill to get through the content instead of like paying money up front or swiping or whatever. And some people apparently don't like that. So I don't really know like what the solution to that would be. If fame wasn't good enough for them, like what then? Did they just want them to remove fame completely or something like that? I got no idea what goes on in those players' heads sometimes.
It. I don't. You've been around for a while, so do you remember the infinitely scaling uh,
Oh,
ancient
the
dungeons?
infinite ancients thing. Yeah,
So I think people would like that option again because that technically was, but that like they
I've
kept,
heard that being thrown around. Yeah,
yeah. Um, I can
just
I can
I'm
let
sorry to interrupt you again, but
Freecom
just
answer that question.
the person who asked me that people are mad that you bring in Cutline. It's not really that so much as there's some this happens in every MMO. There's some people who uh, they get an opportunity to do the content at Cutline, and then they piss away the opportunity by not not improving themselves, you know, at Cutline content, and then try to blame me or everyone else for it. Not about fame or
Is that
just
about?
don't get content behind how much she.
Okay, I am reading the
Yeah, I mean,
chat.
yeah, I can see that. I can see that angle too.
Jeppy said a little bit back. I feel like O-level growth pre-trait Scion felt not very rewarding. Yes, it was like slowly inching upwards in fame with very slow increases in damage, and just kept getting harder to grow the closer you got to the top. I think that's what the intent was. You did feel an increase in damage and increase in capability pre-Scion when you went from like Castle of the Dead to Meister's Lap. And then once you cleared Meister's Lap and was actually getting through that content and getting the gear from it and the option levels that came out of it, you actually could feel that power level. That completely changed post Seon, where that was not the same thing. You once you hit full option level 40s, you got a big power spike there, but then the next power spike, because we didn't have it yet, the next power spike would have happened at 50, but we didn't have it at that time. So you got this big power spike at 40, and then you were capped. And so you can't really. And so the next place for you to get power is where we're going to come talk in the next section, is with custom equipment. And that wasn't necessarily the right direction for giving us more power. We'll get into that in a second. Let me read the rest of the chat. I'm sorry if I'm slow on this. Again, if you would like to speak, just raise your hand and I'll add you into the list. Don't let me be the only one speaking. Me and Freecom. Ruben Fame. Which famous suggestion, not
I
a
mean, this is
requirement.
kind of what I was expecting, to be honest.
Oh no, this is kind of similar to what happened last time. We did get a lot more speakers, which is great. It's not mandatory for anyone to speak. It's just if you would like to. That's kind of it. I don't mind being the loudmouth here.
I Afro, I just want to, what you asked about, is Cutline considered enough to clear by Neopol? I saw this crazy comment on Reddit that uh, Neopol's design goal for Moo Raid specifically, and I don't know if this applies to the call, but they said that their design goal was to have a 5% clear rate at launch. And I don't know if that's true for like other content.
They have stated in the past. This was previous cap with when it was Sirocco and Ozma raid.
Mhm.
That the recommendation they have listed for clearing the dungeon, like a plus 12 weapon, and then it's like it's recommended to have a plus 12 weapon, is like the highest point that they have for clearing the raid. If you have a plus 12 weapon, and you have gear, then you should be capable of clearing the raid. There is no amp requirement. There is no enchant requirement that they look at. They look at if there's like they have a specific like internal view, and then the community is the one that decides that, for example, with Move Raid, you need 20 billion DPS and a 15k Satyr, PMI Satyr to be able to even start running the raid, which is completely untrue. They've already kind of like, thanks to KDNF and other people who have, people here who have kind of already done the calculations and the math, basically, the minimum cut line requirements for Move Raid is a lot more relaxed than people might think. People making the cut line be 61, 63 is 63k fame, right? The cut line is 58k and change, just a little bit over 58k, and having around 13 billion DPS and having around a 13,000 PMI on your Satyr. Exactly, this is exactly it. It's just because of how punishing the raid is when you fail a gimmick is what makes it more difficult in comparison to previous raids where you had a lot more. You could have, as I mentioned, as I said this on Reddit when someone was talking about it, you could have a green party. Moo Raid does not have a green party. You can't just have someone come into the raid and kind of like not be as much of a what's the word? Must be not contribute as enough as anyone else.
And they
Every
can't just sit there and look pretty and still get a clear.
right the you for Move Raid, everyone has to be actively participating. We can talk about the. I didn't want to. I did say it will include time for the kind of gameplay aspects of the raid that people are having issue with. Tomaki is right. It actually is Tabor's. You have boss fight after major boss fight after major boss fight,
Don't remind me of Sabers.
into a bigger boss fight, and like you don't really have time to kind of like relax, and that's one of the major issues that I know quite a few people have mentioned with Moo, is that you just don't really have time to kind of like breathe. You're constantly going, and in the raids that I've done, it has seemed like that has affected people's like perception of the raid. They do feel like they're in a rush and do feel like they are being rushed. Right. Ice Bob saying there's people
Yeah,
expecting
that's
to
why.
clear the
That's
raid.
why ultimately the cut line doesn't mean jack squat, because this game doesn't quantify your piloting skill. So it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
do I care if the cut line's 20 bill? If you're 20 bill and you have no brain cells, then your cut line might as well be infinity.
Yeah. So it makes it feel like far more like uh, why can't I think of the word? Puts a lot more pressure on you than there really should be pressure put on someone playing a game. I always compare it to WoW raids whenever I talk about raiding because that's what my experience has been. And you'll have an 11 boss raid where the time between bosses is just fighting trash, but that time spent between the bosses where you just are fighting trash mobs and just kind of clearing the path to each one of the bosses, that gives you the kind of pause you need to kind of be like to come down from that high you get when you're fighting a boss, and the kind of like that the like anxiety you have while you're fighting something for the first time, or a difficult mechanic is happening that requires your attention. Having that space in between it is very comforting to kind of like make you not make you feel like you're constantly in a rush for things. I just repeated myself.
Yeah, that's the thing I noticed about this raid in particular. Like I noticed this in the first few runs that I hosted. Like that little screen you get at the beginning of the raid in the beginning of phase 2 when you pick buffs.
Yes.
I noticed that the timer doesn't stop. I'm like, why is this a thing, the Opals? You can't even give us like 60 seconds to breathe.
So the timer doesn't stop, but the phase doesn't technically stop. I believe this is what it is that the timer continues, but the phase doesn't begin until you choose the buffs. So you
No, I've actually had somebody tell me uh, during a practice raid that somebody deliberated on the phase 2 buffs for so long that they actually got hit by a deharmonization.
oh, that's weird.
And like I don't know if like he was like messing with me, but because that sounds like a really bad design decision if that's the case.
I don't know if I've heard that from anyone else.
Well, yeah,
I
so there
know
you
it.
go. Somebody else said it too.
Yeah, I know it eats the raid time. I just don't know if it the raid is like the phase is actively going on during this thing.
Mm.
But yeah, it would be nice if there's a break because that's what kind of helps to like. If you're fighting a raid for like around 30 minutes and you have to go to the bathroom, one person with how almost every single one of the boss mechanics in this raid requires all four people to be actively there. One bathroom break is just boom. It's just not fun.
And like it kind of reminds me a bit of Ozma raid. Like if you're not just steamrolling everything, like Ozma was just equally as mentally exhausting as Moon Raid.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't finished Moon Raid yet, and it's like just trying to get to phase 2 is already mentally exhausting enough.
Yeah, the phase one is Azerhan hard, but a little bit more mechanics. But it's with the addition of you need to constantly be aware of each one of the
You need
bosses.
situational awareness, yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
So while you have everyone managing things, you also have to be aware to make sure that once a boss is dead, you're making sure to constantly go back in and kill their shield so that they stay dead. Um, so
And I can already tell doing Cutline pups as long as I have like situational awareness is like For me, it's like a nice to have thing, but I don't expect it. Like people are barely able to dodge things in normal content, so
Yeah. Um, so move rate is
the
created
move rate is
factual.
created with VC in mind. Yeah, that's a good point because KDNF has built-in VC,
I know that
and
that
then
gets constantly brought up. Why we don't have the built-in VC? We're never gonna get it.
it's probably server based if I had to guess, and they probably don't want to rent out more servers for that.
Um, I don't even know how I don't know how it works in KDNF, but like uh hey Mezza, that being after is kind of right. We do have Discord. Discord
Yeah,
is
I
heavily
distinctly
used.
remember there was an EX stream where they literally said just go use Discord, and it's like you can find players in game that have never used Discord like in the entire time they played DFO. So it's like that's a poor excuse.
Oh, there's people who play the game who don't use any of the kind of social media that will get
Yeah,
them to either
yeah.
Discord, Reddit, or even YouTube. They only hear about things that happen in the game from the website or
Or other players in game.
yeah. That's actually quite normal. Um, if it feels disingenuous, we had VC in game. Most people would still use Discord. It's because we're already using
I
Discord that
mean,
we'd use it.
Sage, put it in this way. I've had a lot of people come to my Discord server through the call raid, and like there's a lot of people in this game who need a voice on a mic to tell them what the gimmicks are because they either don't read or they don't understand what they're reading on a guide. So the process of just go look at my what was it, my guild description to get the Discord link, and then you have to expect them to actually open a browser and type the Discord link, and you've probably already lost them.
Hmm. I think
So it's like,
Anne brings up an excellent point. For people who don't like to socialize, how do you expect them to go into Discord? If
oh yeah, that too.
you that's just it. You kind of have to be able to explain to them that you don't have to participate in speaking, just like this community conversation. You don't have to participate in speaking. You can just be there to listen. It is far easier to be able to talk to someone about how to maneuver mechanics than it is to type it out, just because of time. Um, that's purely it. You just have to be able to explain to them that you if you can at least listen, that works. But if you just absolutely can't do it, that's there. There's nothing we can do about that. You can't force someone to do something they don't want to do, but you should be able to explain to them in a way that like how to do it, and like give them the options to know what to do. Having the guide helps. Having like I've seen people say they don't. I don't know why they don't like Sakrina's minimalist guide. It does a good explanation of the raid, but like if you can't
I've heard of
read, if you can't read, like just look at the guide. You can go to the DFO archive where they have a GIF or a video of every single mechanic, and that is a far more detailed guide that can give you a good idea of what you're expected to do. Speaking of, Raven is here, person who manages the DFO archive. Thank you so much for your guides. They're very detailed and great. But calling him out, but still, we do have a lot of options. But if you provide them with every option you possibly can, um, and you get to the point where you just exhausted all options and they still aren't communicating, that's at that point you just have to kind of let it go to there.
that's when I start trying to cut them off.
Yeah. Um,
I can't help people who can't help themselves, so or don't want to help themselves really.
but to we've kind of gotten a little bit off topic. I'm sorry. I wanted to kind of keep this going on the topic list. So you guys can continue having the conversation about this in the chat. I'm going to go back to the topic list, and we're going to talk about the custom epic equipment system. So what worked for the system is that it provided a further customization of your preferred build. Early on, there really wasn't too many options. and you kind of just found a custom that you liked or it would work, but because we didn't have the option to re-roll things, um, sorry, Mezza. Yeah, we'll get to the skill thing in as we go by. But the customs were kind of just like epics that if you got a 4/4 early on, you won the lottery. If not, you just kind of toss it into a pile because you couldn't just re-roll them. You just got them. But once we got the ability to re-roll them, and they became much more involved with gear, they gave weaker builds more options to become more competitive with stronger builds. A little asterisk on that. Aiming for the perfect 4/4 custom was a long-term goal that gave players a reason to continuously run content. You could either get it as a drop or you could re-roll it. That's a kind of incentive to play the game. And then, kind of related, Sacrosanct Gear serves as a well-balanced gold sink in that you could trade it to other players, and Sacrosancts, the custom lines on them were basically you could trade them from between people. Sorry, my cat is back. There he is. And you could use Sacrosanct Gear to craft a truly custom piece of gear that combined the strongest options from every type of custom gear for a single slot. What didn't work with customs is it took several gear balance updates for custom epics to get to the point where they are now, where they have just way too much power. A perfect example is a sub-equipment custom, which is just 20% skill attack, just 5% skill attack line options on it. No matter what type of sub-equip custom you find, you just take one that has 4 or 5% skill attack options on it. You look at the other pieces, most of them was that if you got a custom, you're looking for the most possible damage you pull out of it that you could. And that kind of took away from like the fun of gearing, where like the effect is interesting, and it just became like you were just getting as much damage as possible on each slot.
Now, I got a question about that. Like, I was one of those people who kind of just threw away every custom I got before we got warp dimension cubes. Like, was the 4x 5 overall damage thing like a thing back then, or?
Yes. For sub equips, I think sub equips have always been just the possibility of getting like 4 times 5% damage, or if you were lucky, you
Well,
get like
it doesn't have to be like specifically that, but just like customs were like they were that powerful back then too, right?
not always. But some of them have kind of kept the same power level over time. I believe sub equips are one of the ones that from the beginning has remained as powerful as they have always been. But other slots, like the perfect example, are belts. It used to be that you didn't take a custom belt, and then now the only option is for switch belt.
I mean, four
Or
switch builds happened, yeah.
or for Magic Stone, you had multiple options because it didn't have that 8% line on the Deep Diver mask. But once we got Deep Diver, which Deep Diver didn't exist until we got Meister's Lab, if I'm remembering correctly, that line didn't appear. But that line was, yeah, like you said. Now you always take DD mask. It doesn't matter if you find a Forest Witchstone or a Blue Barrel Gemstone that has skill attack options on each one. You want to take the DD mask because it has 8% on it. And even back then, the DD mask had 8% options on it, and you could get unlucky and get the one that didn't work because it was for non.
Yeah, so it's like this whole custom thing. Like I, I tend to use this comparison a lot. It's like somebody at Nexon or Neopol like took out they eyeballed how Path of Exile rares work and then executed it completely wrong.
I mean, it
So
is
it's like,
it is the what do you call Diablo, the ARPG style of gearing.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's just the AR that kind of gearing style, taken to an extreme. Because like I've played Diablo 3 for quite heavily. I really like Diablo 3. I liked playing Diablo 4, but it's the content. What is it? The game loop that you're constantly trying to find better and better gear, and it's like the same pieces of gear with a select number of options, and you're always getting one option that just sucks. That's not fun. Customs were basically were that, but you still had the options of fixed gear that was actually competitive. It's just when they made customs like so powerful, it became kind of annoying that you were spending more time hunting for customs than you were kind of like actually playing the game.
Yeah, like just today, I was trying uh, finish up my shock build on a character, and I literally blew 800, uh, like 800 warp dimension cubes worth of harmonious energy in two lock cubes, and I still didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's
it feels terrible. So,
yeah, that is a problem. Um, it's been kind of funny because I wanted to. I'll get to it in a second because I believe I bring up the new fix sets. If I don't have them in this list, the new fix sets are awesome. They're really really good that we have them now. Kind of sucks we got them this late, but I'm not going to complain about that. Excuse me.
I also want to bring up like a different perspective that some people here might have not have thought of. I've had players on my server just completely give up on customs because they were too confusing for them. So I don't know if there's that angle to all this.
I mean, yeah, that was. Did I not include that? Nope, I did not include that as part of the thing. But yeah, customs are not necessarily easy to understand. Even though like you can just ask someone, "Is this a good custom?" and they'll say, "No, this is the custom you should use," or you can go to dfo.gg or dfcat or duntam and look at people's gear and just copy that.
Well, yeah, I mean
That's not a
the person that I was
solution.
talking about. I'm not going to name names, but the person that I was talking about did that, and then only he only copied the literal icons of the gear and none of the options, and then he threw his arms up when we were telling him how to do the right options.
Yeah,
He's just like, nope, I'm not doing this. Just give me the records traces pieces.
and this is where the terms of bag maxing and bleed maxing come from, because why would you do anything when you can just go bleed? Why would you experiment when the bleeding is the best spell you can go with? And
Mm-hmm.
I really should have
Well,
gotten
I've
a drink
always
there.
kind of been of the mindset that, yeah, sure, go with the meta, but I mean that assumes you're a good pilot, and I'm not going to claim that I'm a godlike DFO player. Like I run shock on a handful of characters because I'm just bad at piloting them. I'd rather have the extra defense. So it's like there's no shame in not doing the meta, but I mean there's also the angle that not everyone like whatever build you're trying to cook, like it's probably you're probably gonna get less help on it because less people are doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I there's a good I can use myself as an example on my necromancer, my vigilante, and my male grappler. I run blue barrel armlet because it has the option of high cooldown recovery on three specific skills, or on specific skills, and it's a more for me it's a more interesting build because I get to use the skills that I like more frequently, but it's not as strong as DD Watch. It's not as strong as Bleed, so I will see other players who are using those builds doing far more damage than I am, but I don't know if they're having as much fun as I am because I'm doing it for fun.
Oh yeah, that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. So
Right, and I think this was kind of been lost with custom epics. It's kind of what the thing I'm saying that's not working is that customs have taken away that fun factor by just throwing damage at the problem. With
hmm.
customs, you just get a huge amount of damage if you get the best customs and use it with the best build or best builds. And you just end up having huge amounts of damage. But when it comes to like the fun factor, you're gonna have to take less strong customs or run a less like damage oriented build to get there, and that because this community in this game is just unfortunately so focused on highest damage possible, you end up kind of not having a lot of like ability to kind of experiment or learn because you don't have a lot of knowledge about things. Like
I,
I've seen a lot
no,
of people
sorry.
use shock and shock is, a lot of people just consider shock weaker, but for some characters, shock is actually quite good. We just don't have enough information to actually say yes or no on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just how it is with games like this, where when the progression is extremely linear, like all you can really do is how do I get to the next big thing faster, really, and then beat that next big thing faster and go into the next thing. So it's like there's not a lot of room for people who just want to take it easy and or maybe do something else every once in a while. I think you mentioned that in your Google Doc somewhere.
Might be. I don't think it's the next section. The next section, I don't really. If we're just kind of moving along, I know that people are talking in the chat. Like it's a good conversation we're having here about customs and stuff. So, I'll try to remember to get here. Also, once again, if you would like to speak, just raise your hand. You're more than welcome to speak. I don't know how many people actually have issues with the fusion equipment system. I personally don't. I think this is back when we had it in Sirocco and Ozma, just fusing gear. I think it's been one of the best new additions to the game ever. So going through this, it just, you can upgrade the gear without replacing it. You can provide a visible form of progression because you can see the different gear icon. At the very, other than Dusky, you could obtain fusions guaranteed over time, which is great. And then the different fusion options per piece had roughly the same power, provided in different ways. For example, Flame Dragon was CDR, Green Dragon was neutralization, Black Dragon was kind of like power at a cost, but that cost you could cover. And really, what did not work with fusion stones was Dusky Island. It definitely did not feel good that you had to do the hardest difficulty to still have a chance of getting the best possible fusion stones, which were RNG drops from that, and you only could get a guaranteed piece once per month from there. And while these were replaced with Azrahan hard fusions or like move raid fusions, that wasn't until 6 months after Dusky had come out. I know some people who were doing Dusky every single week. They had gotten the proof every single month, and they didn't finish Dusky fusions until Azrahan came out. That kind of thing is just doesn't feel good. Thank you, Des, for being an unwitting victim of this, or unwilling victim of this. I don't know why I said that. It just sucks. Like, you're going through this content, you want to be able to be able to feel progression, but you don't get it.
Well, I guess the degree to which you let that affect you depends on how long you've been playing. I guess right, I've been here since like 80, like Anton, and it's kind of like I didn't even realize how bad it was until you pointed it out.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the case because with all previous raids, you had gear guaranteed over time. It's just it doesn't feel good when the only option is RNG, and that's why I think a lot of people had issue with Dusky. Not because of the actual challenge of the content. I think a lot of people actually really like Dusky for the challenge. The reward system was just, I think most people just did not like it. And then now we have the Primeval fusions, which I don't mind having this like chase level of gear rarity. It's just when it's like Primevals, it doesn't feel good when it's it's entirely controlled by RNG, and you could just be extremely unlucky. My issue, I mean, this is kind of relates to Mythic Gear, where like with Scion you would get you had a chance of getting Scion gear or the Mythic Gear, and it would be random. You could get 2 pieces and then get the set bonus, which was a nice bonus thing, but the problem was it was entirely RNG, extremely difficult to get, and In my case, I didn't get the first mist piece on my main until I completed Pity. He didn't get his second piece of mist gear on him until he hit Pity again from what's the dungeon? Why am I not working?
Mediator.
Thank you, Mediator.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
it took me two times Pity to get two pieces of mist gear on my main. When I for Primevals, it took me until getting Pity in Library for my main to get his first Primeval. And I had all characters on my other account just get them like within their first archive run. It does not feel good for something that has as much power as it provides. Granted, Primevals don't have too much power over the regular fusions, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
When it's something that like is kind of like what kind of quote unquote completes your gearing when it's entirely controlled by RNG. Quickly, Ice Bob. No, it was not Kiek. I don't know how you would pronounce that properly. It was Fragrant Joy, the necklace. So I won in that sense. But
What exactly is Kiek? I don't know if I'm missing something.
it's called it was Exploding Nightmare. Yes. It is it's
Right.
the Awakening Primeval Fusion. Both Hashing Evil Seed and Exploding Nightmare, their flavor text relate to each other,
Um,
which is a cool thing. But here's my problem with that: you don't see the flavor text if you fused it.
the,
Afro
yeah, that's
brings up
probably why I didn't know about it.
Afro brings up one of my favorite changes is you don't have to use any resources to unfuse and fuse. I think this is going to be going forward. This is how they should be doing fusions. The fact that it's now just a click of a button instead of having to go through a whole UI for it is really nice. Yeah, it didn't feel good to constantly have to fuse and unfuse, and especially when you had to change the pieces. It didn't feel good to have to constantly use mats to take one piece off and put another piece on. And the ability to now swap the fusions essentially is a really nice touch. It means that you can kind of customize your build a little bit more with fusions, and I think this is where like I'm trying not gonna get too much into like my own like ideas, but this is where I feel like they should really branch off of gearing. Is that it's much easier. Thank you, Afro. It's much easier to experiment with different kind of builds and different kind of options if you have the ability to just kind of freely swap things. I would like to bring up the new gearing system preview that they have from Gravity Falls. The preview we had, I think, just this past weekend, where they talked about having the new gear system. This is just a preview, so we don't know for certain if this is going to be like what they're planning to do or if it's just what they're thinking of. But essentially, someone said it was similar to Eterna gearing, where when you get the piece, it goes into a UI, and then you can get that piece whenever you want. So the way that they have kind of shown this as an example for Gravity Falls gearing is that you get the piece of gear from the dungeon, and then it goes into this UI, and you can swap it out anytime. That's fantastic. That's that's such an improvement over what we have now.
It's definitely better than what somebody else explained it to me as. Like they thought it was going to be like they just they thought it was going to be like option levels, but with rarity.
Yeah.
But I guess the screenshot proves otherwise.
I'm pointing at my screen like it's gonna do anything, but like what Zero Knowledge said is absolutely correct. They learned from the custom book. So it's I think this idea is great because they do kind of want to make epics feel more like epics. And that's something that they'd mention. As you see in the example, I don't know how well this is easy to see, but as you see in the example, it shows that like these are three different gear sets, and they're all, the one of them is in full epics, and I think there might be either a mythic or primeval piece in there, but you can see the others are a mix of legendary, epic, and unique. You still get the full set effect for having these gear pieces. You just don't have to be in full epics. So I think that that's a kind of a good way of kind of giving players agency in their progression. That is always something that is feels good, but personally, I think that this is kind of a solution to the gearing problem. It's a fantastic solution. Let's talk about set points. We didn't get too much of an explanation of what set points are. It just said that the set points increase as the rarity increases. And that
it's
is
probably going to end up being like how like Regard's Traces works.
it looks.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it looks like that's what their possible replacement to Fame is. Because you could have a set point level for uniques, for like uniques, legendaries, epics, and so on. That could be where they're going with that. That would be, I think, a little bit of a better way of doing it, but again, it's just a preview. We don't know for sure. Let's see what people are saying. So Afro. Okay. It's not necessarily a replacement for Fame. I don't think they're going to get rid of Fame. They didn't say they were. But it's more of kind of like showing what level of power you're at. Which I don't think we've actually had this kind of like power level difference representation since, I want to say, Luke, where we could have people who were in legendaries be able to participate in raid because of the because of the set effect. This is also the whole mess with synergies, though. Nico mentioned that a 100 cap, 2-piece, 3-piece, and 5-piece all had Fame added to it. Yeah. We are not primarily discussing the preview from last week's D-Talk, but it is part of the conversation as it applies to the things that we're bringing up. So basically, if it relates to a topic we're talking about, I'm going to bring it up. So we were talking about custom epics and the gearing system. So because this is what they're changing the whole gearing system to, because customs are going to be gone and the way that gearing is going to change completely. This is the preview that they gave for us, so that's why we're talking about it. All the things that should have been there at the start of cap usually comes later. Yep, we did mention that. It's as Des said, it's the MO of Neopal. It's just kind of, they've realized this is something good that we should have in hindsight, and we don't get it for 6 months. It's a little bit more annoying for our for our server, because we always. Sorry.
Our fork of the game. Sorry, just dev talk or comp side talk.
Right. Because we see it way before we get it. So that does affect player perception of whether or not they want to even bother participating in the game when we see that like 6 months out we get all these changes. That did have an effect on customs, because we saw that like all these customs were just going to become amazing in 3 months. So we should hunt for them now, which is just what happened. Or these specific lines get buffed incredibly, so you should gather them now, and it changed how it affects our economy to some degree. Like, but with that, it affected our sacrosanct economy. As Nico said, we all had Forest Witch Rings ready, or some people had Forest Witch Belts ready. It just ended up being that having this feature site does affect how we play the game in certain sense.
We just look at Sacrosanct now. Like, basically, the second the next cap was announced, like Sacrosanct prices and everything related to it fell off a cliff.
Yeah, even though they said that people who had like had good sacrosancts or like perfect sacrosancts would still be able to use them to a certain point in Gravity Falls. They didn't say what it would be, but I mean, all customers being replaced. That's just unfortunately the
Yeah,
side
I
of the.
mean, immediately I think of like +7 mod products of corruption from 100 cap. It's like, oh yeah, don't
Uh
worry,
huh.
all the money spent on this would be put
Uh
to
huh.
good use, and then you never heard of
Uh,
anybody using it as soon as
uh,
105 started.
the my favorite thing was there was, I think it was Janji from Kadenev had a character whose full gear was just +8 pals.
Hmm.
Super cool for it to just become completely useless the next cap. I personally, I don't think that this kind of gear is bad to have. I think it's actually pretty useful to have a massive gold sink gear. I did mention that with the yeah, I did mention in the previous thing that the sacrosanct is a well balanced gold sink, because it gives people who want to like get a significant power increase a way to do that. It also takes a ton of money out of the economy. It's just the way that customers went, like sacrosanct, just like their value has just gone up and down the entire level cap. Okay, let's see. Yep. All right. Yes. The reason why they had the dev talk in August is because sorry, they determined that the gearing system was not good, and they were going to basically fast track the next season, or really the next level cap. The From what I understand, the goal was for I believe it was Venus Raid to be part of this level cap. Afro, this is Korean game development that is just way beyond my understanding. It's just how game development works in Korea, as far as I'm aware. I don't know if there is an actual reason, but it's not something I actually have an answer to. I don't know if someone has an actual answer to that. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Miss Fusion Stones at large feels terrible. Yeah. Previous one haven't seen much. Just focus placed on post Azrael Fusion acquisition at baseline. This large feels terrible. It's just because they have a limited, like, once we get Awakened Forest, we'll have another source of the fusion stones, also another source of primevals. And as I says, they're being banned again in Korea. It's whenever they introduce these kind of things, it was the same. If you play during 100 cap, the Mythic Gear was an idea that most people just hated. Honestly, it's what the problem with Mythics is that you could either get a best in slot one and have none of the gear that actually worked with it, or you could get the worst one and also have none of the gear that worked with it. Because of
Well, I mean,
everything. Go ahead.
from what I understood, I mean, when people weren't calling that system the spawn of Satan, like people were saying that it was a good idea on paper, but just like everything else they do, they executed it wrong.
Right.
It's
Yes.
like how it was from, I think 100 cap was supposed to be like the gear diversity cap, and then it's like you can't have gear diversity when your only option is like the freaking the dice earrings mythic or whatever it was, and that's
The
all you ever get the entire cap.
calling out deaths. Why don't you? Uh, I think those
I
like
mean, I that was one of my characters, so I'm just speaking from,
I I
that's
think
personal anecdote.
I think Death said he got like 3 or 4 characters with the Dice Mythic. Dancer Mythic was a great one, but this was also at a time when we still had texture differences. So it felt weird for a character who didn't wear cloth to have to wear cloth. So you had a lot of people having to compensate all of this like changes in gear because you had to make up for speed, you had to make up for crit, you had to make up for a lot of different things. Interacting with. Yep, welcome, Des. Top of the RNG variant, some felt regular interacting with some of the least interesting content. Hell mode and all of its permutations. Yeah, Hell mode has been a wild kind of thing. People really either and kind of like the RNG or they absolutely hate it. That's just it. I don't really have like a good opinion on it. I personally don't mind it, but it's definitely frustrating when you run hundreds of them and get nothing. Um,
It's like for me personally, the extent to which you had to engage in hell mode to get anywhere in this cap. I was like, how about we just cut the middleman and make it like a literal slot machine NPC at this point?
that would be one option.
Because like it's just like it's basically a slot machine with the world's heaviest like lever pull.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Des.
Hello. Yeah, some people liked Hell, some people don't. The whole mythic thing was a mistake because you either get a very good one, but if your character wasn't ready for it, then it's useless.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was pointing out that the primevals are kind of the same, but I think not so much because
Oh yeah,
at
I
least
was
even
gonna
if
go
you get a
back.
primeval,
Sorry, go ahead.
they're still usable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you get Kek or exploding, I mean, hatching evil seed, it's still OD, and it still gives you a boost in damage, but in the form of your awakenings. So it's still usable. But like, say back in 100 cap, you get, what was it, 100 cap? Yeah, you get flowing mythic. Who in their right mind would use that?
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Sino,
right.
sorry. Um, to kind of respond to Sino, boring from a gameplay perspective is these hell mode things. Yeah, that's it's the problem of where do you put your rewards? I think this is what you can go back to the Gravity Falls thing. I think this is what is part of their dungeon change. It's not too detailed, but what they basically said is that uh, it sounds like this is with them saying many dungeons will have bigger volume compared to what we've seen so far. Part of which was already heard from Nabel being updated. Nabel is a future raid with solo, normal, and hard versions simultaneously. They've invested more resources and manpower than ever before, so the players don't have to worry about quality being spread out thin. Farming and challenge will be separated entirely as well. Instead of adding challenging aspects to mandatory contents, they'll make them optional contents that can be challenged just for the sake of enjoyment. So it sounds like what they plan to do with the kind of like gameplay loop is give people options to just play the game, which why has that not been an option before?
Kind of like Sirocco challenge.
Oh
Right.
Jesus.
They I did see it's not part of this list. It's you'd have to check the VOD. Uh, I don't know if they showed it. No, it's so I know someone has posted video of it from the VOD, which is at the top of the document. But basically, they showed there's like you could go and do like solo Bakal raid, and then they completely change how the mechanics work. So like when you're fighting Bakal, he has the power of Sparazzi, or he has the power of Skasa. So they changed how things work for solo, so it actually feels like you have a challenge. That's cool.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand why they didn't do that before because like they had
Hindsight.
they I
Hindsight.
mean yeah I mean they had guide mode which
The guide
They
mode
also had
thing
Pro Party.
yeah
the
they had
thing that the
pro
pod
party
was
too.
talking about was like a discussion about the KR devs and their player base. Also, like they were complaining about, well, we have all this outdated content. What are we supposed to do about
Mm-hmm.
this? Just floating the game, and it's one thing they pointed out in their community was that we still use all of this outdated content, but what's the purpose? You get your tokens, you get some gold from it, but sometimes you still need the mats so you can make the necessary fame stepping stones, so to speak. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
won't suddenly get a character from 30k unless you're doing a character event or a leveling event, right? And your gear doesn't like you just don't get handed that gear normally.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what
That's.
they're trying to do with what they were discussing and showing the preview of those older contents that we as our server and like KR and all the other servers have pointed out, what are you supposed to do with all these outdated contents? Well, that's kind of what the preview was meant for. So you can do these contents and they'll stay relevant or something. That was the intent.
There's
reward you with stuff.
There's also something that I don't think has been brought up, is that we have that new achievement system where if you get old gear and old items from previous content, you can slot it into this collection and get like an emote, or you get like a little bit of a story. That is a small incentive to get people to do old content. I like it's kind of funny they did that, and then included a lot of things that you just don't have the ability to get anymore because the content doesn't exist. But
funny story about that one. If anyone here is listening, don't do the liberation weapon one. You literally get a paragraph of text mourning that level cap.
You also get that for submitting your or putting in your Bakal weapon. Again, that seems like kind of like a low reward incentive for doing it. I think that's a good starting point to kind of get people to do this old content, because one of the items is a unique weapon skin, and that's like, I look at that weapon skin, it looks pretty cool, and you can do it for each character, I believe. So like, you can, I mean, getting the material for that one achievement is really annoying. If I've looked at it, I don't think you can get access to half of the content that gear drops from. You have to basically hope to get it out of the Spirit Heaven.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool idea. It would be cool if they expanded that. That is an option that they can do. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But in the current format, this achievement thing is the collection achievement thing doesn't really feel as valuable. I think some people may have. I wish we could get into the game. It's kind of a little bit. It's silly that I don't have it at the moment. But there is another collection thing. If you have certain characters at max, I believe if you have certain characters at max level, there's one part of the collection is having those characters, and then they get a voiced, like, just image of all the characters interacting.
Yeah, I had one of those. Yeah,
those are super cool. I love that. I really, really like that they included that, but they didn't really promote it too much. I think it's kind of difficult to even navigate to it to be able to find those, and that's a reward thing for just playing your characters that you like. But it kind of sucks. Like, I really wish that was more promoted.
All right, and a little somewhat related thing. I don't know if anybody's fiddled around with the new quest log stuff, but your awakening, I think it's your awakening quest now. You get to hear character talk on those. Like, they actually read the quest text and everything.
Yep.
This is all really cool things. Like, I know that they made a big deal about the Neo Awakening story update, but they need to they need to make it more obvious. Like, it's not easy to find that stuff unless you've read the notice on the website or had someone in the game tell you if you've done it before. It's just, these are the kind of things that are cool little additions to the game that we don't really see because people don't talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully with this new kind of like challenge dungeon thing, where you have you can get a cool reward by doing a challenge dungeon, it being talked about will get people to look at this achievement list and then kind of work on it on their own. That's one of the things that I felt was very, very successful about the achievement system in World of Warcraft, because there was just a stupid amount of achievements in there. But there was some that you could just going to find them was an adventure of its own, just trying to figure out what certain achievements were. Sirocco Challenge or hunting, which I still think we only have one person on the server with it. I don't know if anyone else has been lucky and gotten it, but when I was playing Rift, that super old MMO. Their achievement system included a whole set of achievements that were just mysteries. They even had a whole system of puzzles that you could just weird jumping puzzles that just existed in the game world to go do it. because it was just an option. So DFO is kind of a little bit difficult in trying to provide those kind of options because it's the gameplay doesn't necessarily lend it to like having these kind of like mini game things. But
seasonal server, anyone?
But having the option is something that should be available.
Well, I mean, the way I see it, I mean, this is just the cynic in me talking, but after they removed partying for leveling, I think they just really want to streamline the game for the, I want to be max level instantly and do endgame crowd.
So that has been that has been a major issue. People really do not like the fact that they took away leveling in like group content and leveling. I 100% agree that they should bring it back because that is one way to get people. That's one way for player retention.
Excuse me. This is just this is just the former fighting game player in me talking, but like this reminds me of a time when fighting game players, like in I would say the mid 2000s, maybe to 2010s, would just basically have a conniption collectively if you so much as implied casual friendly content. Because all of them would just cry like, "Oh, you're wasting dev time on casual friendly content. How dare you?" And like, I don't know if like Koreans do the same sort of thing, or maybe not as overtly, but that's probably why we don't have a lot of casual friendly content. Like the last thing we ever got was like what Dungeon Life Online, and nobody's ever touched that.
Oh, you say that, but like I know a few people here in this chat who are like have it completely maxed out.
Yeah, I say that, and I'm one of those people. So,
so yeah, it's just that like having the option is a nice thing, but it's just whether people receive it, like how people receive it is something that you can't really expect. That's like just a community thing for that. If I remember correctly, and please correct me, anyone, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe KDNF implemented a arcade that included all past minigames or included a lot of previous minigames, and this would be like event minigames.
I heard about that on the CDNF. Like, I think it was, I forgot what I think it was specifically that Sun and Moon roguelite thing, and the one event where you build a team of 5 monsters and go against another 5 monsters. Like,
Coliseum. Yeah, these are mini games that people love.
Like they actually liked them outside of the rewards. So CDNF was like, you know what, we're just going to keep them around permanently just for fun.
Yeah. It would be so nice to play DUD again, you know?
DUD just having like skills that are gigantic or infinite cooldown, break for.
Oh my god. You never know, man.
But it's, I mean, I really haven't heard too much about that, so I don't know if it was implemented, but that's the kind of thing, we have gone completely off topic, but that's the kind of thing that that we would like really like to have, because it's just extra content for people to do. So that's yeah.
It's not really that off topic. I mean, it's player retention we're talking about. So.
Okay, let's see what.
It's like I think ultimately Neopol's problem is that they need to pick and choose who they want to pander to, and I guess they're not doing a good job with whales, and now they're considering feedback from non-whales.
Yeah, it is a kind of like where they get feedback from is a really important question, because at least based off of the interview that I mentioned in the Reddit post, it sounded like they were getting their feedback from beta tests, and this was beta test for the finals and the first Ascendant. But they also mentioned Blue Archive as somewhere where they're getting feedback from, and if you know anything about Blue Archive, that community is special.
Yeah, I haven't. I played a little bit of the first Descendant, and like I noticed like a lot of the problems with the grind. But I heard since I dropped it that the dev team was actually listening to player feedback, and like, gee, I wish DFO had any of that, and here we are.
Right now, our dev team, our group of people, DJ, Tigger, Dooney, G, everyone who's really part of like DFO Global, they're here. They're in their community. They listen to us. They try their best to give us
They try to listen.
Right.
It's just
It's
that they
just
are limited in their ability to implement any of the things that they can listen to.
right. So it's like it's kind of a reiteration for any of the new people who are here. Part of doing this is to kind of give them an option of like, hey, we're a community that exists. Please listen to us. We have discussions like this constant. Like if you look at our Discord servers, all the different Discord servers, we have conversations like this all the time. We just don't have anything organized. So this is kind of like organizing it to kind of have this conversation, but you just have to do it to be able to get anything in the first place.
Yeah, because it's better having said something than staying quiet about it than complaining. Why wasn't it just done this way?
Well, I mean, there's a difference between saying something and just shouting at a crowd of people that aren't really listening.
So yeah, I'm gonna get back to our conversation list so I can get to Mezza's thing and not keep him up for keep him held hostage for too long. So we're about to get to that, but the next topic is for the topic list is the gear meta, which to give a very, very brief explanation of what a meta is what everyone plays. That's it. It's just what people in the community have decided is the best thing or the thing you should do for your character if you want to be at the same competitive level as everyone who's at the top of the game. For DFO, the meta is looking at DFCat and seeing what the very top builds, the top 10 builds are, and going with that. That is actually the thing that I say does not work, because what happens when you look at the gear meta from DFCat is that they are in the future in the game. What they have is not always equal to what we have. How they play is not always equal to how we play. And I think something that gets frequently looked over is the top players on DFCat are the top of the KDNF community. So this is like top 100 players of a player base that is almost 100 times ours. So when you see the top player and they have a plus 15 weapon and full plus 14 amps doing an absurd amount of damage on a sandbag, we do not even come close to that in our top 10. Just being honest, like our top players are nowhere close to what their top players are. And we have a significantly smaller community to the point that the gear meta is not really like easily to define by our standards. It's almost entirely defined by KDNF. DFCat does sort by, I believe it sorts by fame. Yeah, it does sort by fame, but if you go to Dundam, it sorts by damage. But one of the other problems is that the main problem, at least with this cap with the gear meta, is that it got solved almost instantly. To give a brief explanation of solving meta, it's when someone comes up with the best thing and then everyone copies it, which in this case is bleed builds. Like it's such a problem that for the longest time people didn't even look at self status as a build option. People didn't really look at DD Watch or Deep Diver Watch builds as an option. Very few people looked at Blue Barrel Armament options or even like non-clear cube fragment options. Like should just do bleed because it's the best possible thing. Even the developers tried to create new builds that tried to compete with bleed, but why? Why would you just use anything but bleed? Bleed has already been solved, and so that just took away a lot of experimentation from people. Even like took away the ability for people to experiment on what kind of gear options there were. And then, unfortunately, there was just certain build options just were completely unviable with how they were designed. I don't know if anyone got a chance to try hit count before it just was completely gutted, but hit count was actually kind of fun. It was an interesting mechanic to work with to try and manage your character with, but they just killed it. I don't know why they killed it, but it's gone. So it did not feel good for these kind of things. And like I bring up Petrification, which is a build that still exists, but very few people are even able to make it work. But like again, you would just when you're trying to show people how to gear, or like if people are asking questions of where they should go with the gear progression, almost way too many answers were just go to DFCat, go to Dundam, go to DFOGG, and copy someone else's build and just go with it.
Well, I mean, sometimes that's part of it is also like laziness on the asker's part. Because I've seen a few people very occasionally on the server, like I'll see people who are like, they'll ask for a build, and then when somebody doesn't answer, would go to dfo.gg, they'd be like, no, actually, I just want the build.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's that angle too.
It is also interesting that we just recently got the ability to share skill builds, and we'll get into the skill system in just a moment. But even that has kind of hints of a problem, because someone's like, "Oh, show me what your skill build is," and you might have a preference choice of using a skill that no one else uses. Giving someone your skill build doesn't really explain what that preference choice really is. That's kind of like a minor issue, but like it's the same thing. Like when you give people, you just hand someone the solution and say this is what you should do, but don't give them an explanation. It kind of takes a lot of fun out of actually like learning how that build is even supposed to work in the first place.
When some people tried to copy seed build and they didn't know that you have to hold seed in order to use it.
Mm-hmm. Or that you with like, or even talisman choice is different. Yes.
I mean, again, oh, sorry, go ahead.
What Afro's saying is 100% true. You definitely felt like you got punished for experimenting when the cost to experiment by swapping your gear around or like changing different pieces.
Oh yeah, that was me in early 105.
Remember that the original cost for option level transfer was 500K.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
and earlier into the cap, if you remember, that our casino was Storm Cold Castle. Jesus. Wasn't fast.
No. And Lala's correct. Like, yeah... customs made the experimenting much more difficult because you had to get the right customs. And because of, like, maximizing your gear, like you couldn't just try a new build with a 3-4 custom because it would obviously be much less damage from the get-go, and so it just doesn't feel good to have this option. Sino says the experimentation in early 110 cap was perfectly fine when the overall power level
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah, that's 100% true, because where you got gear from was just playing the content. You didn't have like customs weren't a majority of gear. Like if you look at gear like gear setups now, it's I think 2 pieces. It's anywhere from like at most 2 to 3 pieces of gear are fixed pieces, and that's usually the bracelet or the earring, depending on the build. And then your weapon is also quote unquote fixed. It's not a custom piece. The rest of your gear pieces are customs. And so there isn't really a sense of like, does the gear that you're getting, is this something you're getting because it has an interesting effect, or is it just increasing your damage? The only thing that defines your build is one piece of gear.
If they want people to stop chasing max damage, they should really introduce better trade-offs for not having that. Sorry, but I mean, the way I understand it with this whole bleed maxing thing, and I say this about myself a lot, it's like I don't do bleed because I'm not that great of a pilot. So the trade-off is that you have the defense of a piece of wet toilet paper, basically. And it's the same thing with like DD Watch.
DD Watch is actually pretty defensively sound, but that comes into the other issue is like defenses sure are valuable when everything one-shots you. So why would you build for damage reduction when damage isn't actually reduced?
No, yeah, like I mean, I get that, but as I've told people before, like I get that gimmicks one-shotting you is fine, but like it's not fun, like stubbing your pinky toe on a random AOE before you even get to the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of part of my motivation for building slightly defensively. So,
That was kind of one of the things why people started funneling themselves into Bleed, because when you introduced Dusky as like the prime content at that time, doesn't matter how much DR you had, Largo so much as looks at you, you die. So what does it matter? If you kill him faster, you have less stress, and that's why like most people just went fuck it, let's go Bleed.
well, I mean, as far as I saw it, well, that's just the price to pay. That's just the price that I pay for,
Of course, like they kind of went away from that kind of thinking, right? They said, "Oh no, Largo is just a challenge content now. We won't be doing something like that, like where the best rewards are going to be locked into C4 and challenge stuff." But yeah,
Yes, you're right. If you're not concerned, you can just do whatever you want. Like, that's perfectly fine. The problem with that is kind of related to the whole rating meta, where
yeah,
you could experiment all you want, but if your experimentation makes it so that like being able to do the most difficult content is difficult purely because you're doing an experimental build, that doesn't really feel like your experimentation you have been rewarded for experimenting. People, like when you do something that's off, like that's non-meta, and you show it, and then people are like, what are you doing? And that's the first response is, what are you doing? Not, oh, that's an interesting choice that you've made. It doesn't feel good to have done something different. This is a problem with gear and content. It's primary at this point for this level cap right now. The problem is primarily with gear, because experimenting is like there's skill options you can experiment with. That's certainly possible. You can have like a damage variance of like 1 to like maybe like 5% by choosing different talismans or playing a different way. How you play the character definitely has a factor in how much damage you deal and how capable you are in a group content environment. But the problem is, if your gear just doesn't look right, people are going to not even like care what you're trying to do and just ignore you that you exist, and push you away because you're not doing what everyone else is doing to have the max possible damage. As both Anne and certainly are talking about, you can have, yeah. Dino actually said that the best things, if you're like doing a pub raid or even like a static looking for like the last 1 or 2 DPS to fill in, you're gonna reject someone for the most tiniest reason, that may be that they're experimenting a little bit versus someone who's just bleed maxing. Why would you take that person who's experimenting when you know that a bleed maxer should be doing a lot of bleed damage? So it's a pretty big issue that gear right now has such a major factor in the person's ability to play the game. At least in a group content setting, this absolutely has no factor in solo play. If you're playing solo, play however you want, have as much fun as you want. But when it comes to group content, it is unfortunately the case that you kind of have to conform to what the meta is.
Two
it's way
words.
truer
Two,
in like
two, two words. Infection build.
oh no,
Oh
please.
my god.
If people here don't know what I'm talking about, go put it in the search bar later.
No, we're not going there.
So yeah.
The amount of perception like that the people have when it comes to the whole experimentation thing, it is so much more pointed if you're trying to do it in pubs. Like, people will care about the slightest thing. Like, if you're a bleed build, but some people see you using the wrong shoe, they won't accept you because that's the established perception.
I've gotten people on my server who complain about elitism. I've gotten them to care because I make it nice and clear that I just take literally anyone for shits and giggles. So I have one guy on my server who's like he also does pubs from time to time under our name when I'm not around, and like he actually has standards. So every once in a while, I'm like why he's like why'd you take this Archon player? I'm just like because I don't know
Well,
like
yeah.
I'm
Well, no,
it's
my point is like
mm,
I'm not just like saying that it's in just our server, but I'm more talking in a general sense.
yeah like yeah
That's
definitely.
how it is like in KR or in CDNF. Like people who run pubs are going to look for the most efficient people, and just by the nature of that, why would you take someone who is experimenting on something else when you could just take this, bleed maxer and be done with it? You don't even have to think about it.
Mm.
Yeah, and Zeno's mentioning that elitism is much more, and KDF. Oh man, sorry. It's true from what I'm hearing is like you have to. People will look you up on Dundam, and if you don't meet their expectations, you don't go to raid.
Yeah, I mean I'm kind of I kind of wish we had something like that here. Like this sounds insane, but it's like you see people who do go out of their way to copy the build correctly on DFOGD or whatever, and then you don't know that they're doing less damage than they should because of XYZ reason. Like maybe they don't have cats, or if they do, they're just doing their rotation wrong or some shit. You know,
That
like again, this goes back to what I was saying about quantifying like the player's skill, which like the only way Korea apparently does that is through like recording the sandbag.
so like I was not expecting up to bring out the AI based DPS analysis that they mentioned in the preview. I need to go get a drink. I'm sorry, but you just basically brought up that exact point. Uh, the problem with these damage simulators, these damage simulation API things, is they're not standard. There is no real
They don't
kind
tell
of
the whole story.
right. So there is no clear like defined standard across all characters that they can actually use to properly evaluate characters against each other. There's just no they have had a standard like that game chosen, which a lot of people will look at those damage chart numbers to kind of determine if a character is doing a lot of damage or not. Those are based off of a specific standard that has been created for making those charts, but that standard is not kind of transferable across characters. Like one character having 20% cooldown reduction is much different than another character having 20% cooldown reduction. One character using a lightsaber is much different than another character using a Zanbato. So it's unfortunately for DFO, there's way too many factors for creating a standard of testing and it's because like we have all these changes across characters, even across subclasses. Like it's kind of like difficult to really say is a berserker better than say a soulbender, because berserkers are fixed damage and so they aren't affected by cooldown effects on weapons, but soulbenders are percent damage and are affected by cooldown changes on weapons. So that's part of the reason why you see a lot of fixed damage, or excuse me, a lot of percent damage characters, like for example across all the slayers. Why you see almost all of them are using katanas, because katanas have cooldown reduction on them. They're not using short swords, which have a higher base damage, because that has a cooldown increase. You don't see them using Zambatos because even though again like it has a higher base damage, it has a cooldown increase. So everyone wants like there's no clear standard on like what you should be using, because there isn't one, and it's just too difficult to create this like a good simulator when there's way too much variance across everything.
Well, I would say this whatever this DPS analysis thing like it would probably it's like a two birds in one stone type of thing. It's like you don't have to simulate their damage; they're just actually doing it. And I don't understand Korean, but I did watch that specific clip, and I think I heard one of the devs say the word replay in English at some point. So I'm like, I don't know why we've never had these, because the whatchamacallit, the videos for the skill previews on your skill tree, like those are replays. If you opened the NF extractor and then copied that to your PvP replays folder, you can actually play them. So I don't know why we never had something like this up until now, apparently.
Yeah, I think like Dafra is correct. Yeah, I do agree. We should have a replay ability because it makes it easier to teach people. It makes it easier to show people how rotations work. I know in the past, a lot of people would just post videos of their character doing a 20-second bag or a 40-second bag and then be like, hey, you could just use this as an example. But there's a slight problem to that in the fact that a lot of characters are just a visual mess. So even if you show like the skill list, it's just really difficult to follow what the character is doing because there's just so much going on. I think I know the meme of the EK, the Elven Knight,
You just chain rush
I'm
intensifies.
the macro like bag example. You just see all the keys being pressed, but if you look at their skill sheet or someone who's properly I'm glad that this is even if you look at someone who's playing the class properly and they have their skill list shown, it's just the lines are just going up. There's just you see constant skills firing off because that's how the class plays, and that's not exactly like a good way to show people how that character plays. We have too many memes of this.
I remember discussing this with some of my friends on my server, and I brought up that they should do what I think it was Guilty Gear Strive did, where players can just make their own combo trials and then send them off to somebody, and they can attempt it themselves.
That actually sounds kind of fun.
Like they should do something. I mean, I don't know if they're not like if they were able to just recycle how like the combo trials work in PvP and just like tweak them for PvE. Like that'd be great.
They're broken. They've been broken since we got the Fair Arena PvP changes. Mezza might be able to add a few words on this, but when we got the Fair Arena changes, 2019, 2018, really long time ago, when they basically said no gear has an effect in PvP, and people have fixed stats, a lot of those combos became impossible because a lot of them actually relied on you having a specific speed. It's an attack speed issue, but they also broke them with certain characters. For example, when Battle Mage got her recent changes, her PvP AI just broke. She doesn't. Her Male Satyr is a great one too, but for Battle Mage, her AI doesn't do anything because it's all based on her old skill system. So what the AI does when you fight it is it runs up to you, and that doesn't do anything. It just kind of stands there. But Male Satyr is a great example because what you would have to do those combos would be to equip a scythe and have avatars to increase your attack speed because he's so slow to begin with. And they didn't give him a lot of speed when they fixed his when they did the whole fixed stat thing. And in fact, a lot of characters are unbelievably slow for no reason. All the agents are actually very, very slow. So the combos that they have are supposed to teach you how to play at a much faster speed than you actually have access to. And in fact, I think some of the combos actually expect you to have the fairy, which gives you a pretty significant speed boost. But like, that shouldn't be the case when you're teaching someone a combo. And it's actually one of the things I've heard from people has been extremely frustrating with even trying to start PvP because these are the combo trials that you're given. You just can't do them. So a lot of people just don't even try PvP because the first introduction to it is just so terrible. And yeah, that's a kind of related to. If we want to have a whole PvP discussion, I'm sure we could probably do that. But
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't. I didn't mean to like derail the
no.
conversation like that. But
Oh no, we're gonna talk about PvP for a little bit in our
okay.
next section. But yeah, it's a problem that just exists because they've upgraded the game, but unfortunately PvP has been kind of left in the on the wayside. But to bring that back up into our topic list, we're gonna go on to the next one, which is with the skill system. So one of the things they stated with the dev talk in August, and it's in the preview that we got for Gravity Falls, in the Gravity Falls preview, is that they want to change how the skills system for all characters work, because it's quite archaic. We have skills that have TP, that like the TP system is archaic and old, and it's just 50% damage increase to a select number of skills. Talismans, and I'll get to TP and Talismans in a moment, but like this whole skill system is being reworked because it has a lot of problems. But generally, what the skill system has, like good aspects of it, is that it's simplistic. The auto assign system is pretty useful for getting people to kind of like try out each one, at the very least try out skills, and the ability to preview and try skills just from the skill window is a really, really nice addition to kind of showing people what the skill does. Because I know, like, I'm a great example of when I was leveling up my Vigilante, I didn't even touch level 45. I didn't look at it. I didn't put any points into it. I just used all the other skills and breezed through. And unfortunately, because of how fast leveling was, I never got an actual time to stop and actually try it. And now, my build is entirely focused around level 45 because I love the skill. But I wouldn't actually have... it shouldn't have taken me until completing my gear setup to find the skill that I really like on her. So... I'm gonna ping him here. So one of the problems with the skill system in general is that too many skills go unused. That's just kind of a factor. You do have the option of just not using a skill if you want to, but a lot of the skills just don't really work in general content. Like some characters have holds that require you to grab the opponent and they can't be grabbed. Some characters have certain skills that just the functionality just doesn't work in a like in group content or even in solo content. So it's a lot of skills are kind of old. Some classes, some former synergy classes have class mechanics that literally do nothing. Welcome, Mezza. Specialist is an example. His intention mechanic. It was supposed to be that intention was related to his synergy. Now, intention is only really used to affect one skill, so that doesn't make any sense. Why it's still there. Skill range, yeah, skill range and hold duration, super useful in a lot of situations. Oh, sorry, wait, your holds don't actually work. Whoops. And then the SP costs for some skills are just absurd. So it actually makes like being able to choose certain skill builds really difficult because, like, for example, 60 and 70 excuse me, level 60 and level 70 skills have very high SB cost to the actual damage of the skill. So 45 as well. And right, and that's kind of the case with a lot of 45 skills, is that they just take up so much SP to not do as much damage as like even a lower level skill. Just doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't feel good when you want to try to use a skill, but it just you are limited in what other skills you can actually use because the SP cost is so high. And the reason we have brought in Mezza, not really, but whenever a character gets updated with new skills, or has some kind of functionality change that changes how their skills work, those skills can't be used in PvP. One of the examples, male grappler could not use when he got Magnum Salt, which is where he does the flip and kick into the ground, the basically the jump stomp. That wasn't able to be used in PvP for I think like 2.5 years after he got it. When female Nenmaster got Spiral Worm and Stormbolt, which is the dash, she still can't use it in PvP. Those are low level skills. Those are skills below the first awakening level. These are skills that are meant to kind of be a definition of what the character is, like the base design of the character. And PvP is supposed to be more exemplify that more, and you just don't have access to that for no reason. But for some characters, like we'll see it with when we get the Exorcist rework, I believe they have access to everything in PvP. All their new skills completely changed. They have access to everything right away. But other characters don't get this. So there's a lot of weird choices when it comes to skills in PvP that make it so that like even the ability to enjoy your character in a different setting is not possible. So yeah.
I mean, it kind of sounds like part of that is just Exorcist gets a free pass because like they have to, he was completely reworked. If they just left him as is, he literally would be unplayable. So,
well, I'm kind of expecting the Exorcist AI in PvP to just stop moving, like Battle Mage.
Yeah, probably. Is it talking? I can't hear you.
I can't hear you. Okay. Yeah, I know sometimes the stage has a little bit of some weird issues with talking. You're not muted or anything, so.
If you're talking, I still can't hear you.
I remember there was an Exorcist PvP guide. I don't know where that is. I do apologize.
That's why I kind of like half joking, like tell people if you want to get good at PvP, buy DNF Duel.
You should have access. You're not deafened or muted or anything. So I don't know.
If you're lighting up.
I don't know. It just disconnected me for some reason. Okay. Discord stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually wanted to state it. Well, thank you. Yeah, I actually think it's really ridiculous because it doesn't make sense why characters like, let's say, Swiftmaster, who's fairly newer, on like the end of like, let's just say mages in general, when they got brought in, he can use every skill prior to 50. But in like you were saying, Nin Master, she has moves like Nin Bead, which is a level 15 prerequisite, and she can't even use it. It's like I agree with you that yes, there are some characters like Exorcist who's getting reworked who it would be unplayable without the whole kit. But it doesn't make sense why some of these other characters are not being looked at. And granted, yes, she's getting reworked. She still doesn't have access to her whole kit. So it's like, what are we doing? Yeah, no, dude, she doesn't. She still doesn't have Stormbolt. Like Worm, I can understand is a little silly of a move, but I can't really justify that when people are doing like level 35s that like fill the whole screen, right? So I don't. Without getting upset, I don't understand the basis of PvP because we'll look at something like mobile, and mobile just does it right. They just kind of go, these skills are accessible. We balanced it. It makes sense. And this version of the game, it just feels weird. It feels like some of the characters are incomplete. Some of them are just playable. And then I don't even want to get into the scaling, but skills just should be available if they're doing reworks and everything. Make it accessible so we could use all the skills. And I'm not saying like anything after 60 or 50, but like there are some moves that generally would translate better for at least people coming from PvE to PvP.
Mm-hmm. I think we Mezza and I talked about when Swordmaster got some skill changes, updates. They took what's the skill? They're level 45.
Yeah, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. You keep going.
They basically nerfed the damage of it so badly that it does less damage than like her basic X string. It's
That's crazy.
and the like
Arcane Sword Blast.
yeah. Oh, thank you. So Arcane
My favorite
Sword
move.
So what Arcane Sword Blast used to do is that it was like 3 big swings and it had an explosion range. I had a huge amount of coverage. It juggled the opponent a lot. It was honestly a really fun skill to use. What they changed it to was you charge your weapon for at minimum, I think it's like 3 seconds, and then you swing the sword 3 times.
For an extra like 1k damage. Not even.
Yeah.
It doesn't even actually give you a better value, and it just doesn't make sense. And I'm praying that we're saying it's like a bug, but even when I watch KDNF, no one uses it, and I'm pretty sure it's because of that reason.
Yeah. So, I'm hopefully with their planned skill change, and let me bring up they talk about it a little bit. Hopefully, this planned skill change that they plan to have in Gravity Falls is something that they can kind of tie into PvP. Like, one of the examples is they plan to. So what they say here is they're planning to merge the talisman and skill systems. They'll add optional choices to change the functions and visuals of skills. They'll try to maintain pre-existing options and talismans, but some underwhelming talisman options will be overhauled and changed. We'll go over this a little bit with the talisman thing in just a moment. Changes in other related systems like weapon masters and character action improvements are also in planned development. They aim to take a step further from pre-existing systems, such as neutralization and counter, and improve combat as a whole. So, PvP is unfortunately not even mentioned, which is sadly kind of expected.
I feel like we're gonna get like that pseudo background buff that we buff/nerf that we don't know it's coming, and we've seen it. Obviously, like you said, it happened with Swordmaster, and it happened with a few other characters that they kind of didn't really fully mention, but most of them they mentioned. It just feels very. Look, I get it. PvP is not the brunt of where most of the majority of the players are, and I'm okay with that. But I think if you're going to at least update stuff, you have to do it from all perspectives. You can't just go, well, today we feel like doing PvE stuff, and even though PvP is affected by it, we'll leave that out. Right? So that's a little discouraging, especially as people like to either compete or they like to play the game extensively strictly in PvP more than PvE. So it almost feels like we're thrown to the wayside, and they're just like, well, you get whatever scraps we give you.
It's crazy to me that they even let this slide, considering KDNF like full on has like esports tournaments centered around PvP. So it's like, what's their thoughts on this? That's what I wonder.
Yeah, I haven't. That actually used to be like something that couldn't say, because when people in hey Tortuga, when people used to be able to bring their plus 13 amps into PvP and have it actually have an effect, that was also something people didn't like, but that was some way to kind of sort of justify that PvP existed. And so it doesn't feel good when that is like, when that kind of sentiment exists, because that means like, again, like the one of the issues with the skill system is that because of all these changes, because of how all this works, because they don't update it with PvP, I know this is kind of going a little bit deeper into the PvP than may be expected, but because these skill changes aren't translated to PvP like at the same time, we get a lot of problems that make PvP accessible or inaccessible to people. So just more and more people just don't bother participating or don't even want to consider it, because it's not something that they can get into. And in the past, PvP was almost purely the end game for people. Like you could go run dungeon, sure, but a ton of people were just sitting in the arena the entire time or hanging out in the arena. And I know this is back really more often in the Nexon days, but even in the early DFOG days, you're spending a lot of time in the arena because there was the option to just kind of just hang out in the arena and just not really like have to participate in endgame. But now the arena isn't really like promoted. They've taken away a lot of things. That Coliseum, that like the quote unquote like mini competitive mode that they had doesn't exist anymore. They've taken all incentives to even PvP away. So for them to do this and then also not have the skill effects added in makes it feel like they really don't want PvP to be a thing.
I don't know how PvEers realistically feel about PvP, and I don't want to give them the staple of saying they just hate PvP because there's nothing there for them to translate over to PvE. But I've noticed when there's something fun for PvEers to do outside of like burning through 16 characters and all their FP. I mean, like, we try our best to make a safe space for them to just come and play and enjoy themselves, but it's so hard when you have stuff like Suzuka does, like the training there is trash. It's just complete dog. I'm not even gonna be mean about it, but it's the truth. We've had outdated stuff for like even the videos are outdated. Like you could ask the community to do the videos for you. We'll gladly do them. It just feels like there's this underwhelming factor that even I've pushed on my end. I've said, hey, when are we getting an update for Suzuka? And they're just like, we'll think about it. It's not in the works, but it's like, hey, you have a community that's willing to do so much over here just to get more people involved. So it's like, how long are we gonna wait until even the PvEers are like, well, this is just stupid, and then the game just becomes a PvE game based only, right? I mean, I look at games like Maple Story, Mabinagi, all those other games. They still have forms of PvP. It may not be like the main core of it, but it's still available and it's still paid attention to. I would imagine way more than what we're getting. God, even Diablo has PvP and it's not the greatest, but it still gets more attention.
Zero Mauer brings up an excellent point, is that in PvP skills, their functionality is baseline, and it doesn't, for a lot of people, the way they experience their character is in the Neo Awaken form. So when you go into PvP and you don't have the Neo Awaken passive changes to the base skills, which most of the Neo Awakening effects do affect base skills, it feels kind of weird to not be able to play the character as if you're playing it at the kind of like baseline that you're playing in the game. Like, you can restrict skills, that's perfectly fine, but I feel like they should at least add in the Neo Awakening passive to PvP, because at least that will make people feel like they're playing their character.
Yeah. I would 100% agree that, like, at some point you got to open up the floodgates to kind of like let it be wild and uncontrollable, so that we can figure out how to balance it. And I think it falls on, I don't know if over in Korea or even China, if they're doing balance patches using these tournaments and using the players, but God, Global is asking for it. We're saying, let us at least, if we're not going to be on the same patches, which it's a whole nother story. If we're not going to be on the same patches, we're not going to be playing the same game as them. At least look at us and ask us what we want balanced. We'll at least give a full list of things that need to either be added. But I do agree. Yes, I've heard the sentiment that multiple times. Many players who are PvE, they're just like, this isn't the same. I just can't get into it. Either they're not fast enough, which I think the game speed could be a little bit faster, or add all the skills. Add everything pre-50. Hell, even give us 55, right? Maybe not 60 because it's a little wild, but 50 to maybe 55 is fine. And I think let's just kind of play the game for what it is. Like, we'll tell you if something's really imbalanced, but I feel like even though we're heard, we're not paid attention to. Where we could say, like, hey, we've said for years, Bloodlust is just not a normal grab. And what do? They just go, it's okay. We're just going to change all make it a common skill that all of the Slayers can still use. Even though most of the grabs don't work with each other, and Bloodlust kind of overwrites, even it's just so active. So it's like, no one's really listening. I'm going to be honest. They're not listening to anything we say with PvP. They're not really looking to balance anything. And I'm pretty being harsh now, because it's been said for years. If you listen to the community, we will tell you exactly what it is. We will tell you what needs to be reworked. And I've even done frame data, and it doesn't make sense. If something like Bloodlust is 12 frames, and another grab is 12 frames, they should both activate on the 13th frame. And then they should grab and tuck each other and push each other away like all the other moves do. But if you want to beat Bloodlust, you have to use Bloodlust. So I think there's a lot of problems that are in PvP that also deter a lot of PvEers. And to be honest, there's no reason for them to play anything in PvP. And I think that's kind of sad because it's not even like they can get together and just mess around and have fun.
Mm-hmm. And Tortuga brings up a good point. We used to have an event. I want to say this was from like 2018. This is what we had 2As. We didn't have 3As yet. And it was a 2v2 PvP like event where you and another person would go into this arena and you had access to all of your skills, including your awakenings. And it was just chaos. It was a ton of fun because you had access to all these skills. You had they didn't change the skill range. The map was just kind of like weirdly very tall, if that makes sense. So you could use your skill, but it would just only hit like the bottom half of the map. And you also had a button that could cancel someone's attack, which ended up people just were canceling each other's awakenings. But it was chaotic and fun because you had access to everything. But when you try to, but at first, right, like when you try to balance, just kind of ruins the fun of things. And yeah, we don't get to that point where we can kind of talk about it. So yeah,
it's just like we're excluded from the talk of like, I like I said, I don't know what happens overseas. I know they get stuff before us, but they look like they're having more fun at times, and it's because they have an abundance of more players. And I think that's also, and people try to say like, oh well, Korean DNF is like, it's not the same. They have just about the same amount of players as us, and I'm like, they really don't. They can queue into ranked and they'll get instant matches, whereas like us, we have like total like maybe on every day maybe 15 if we're lucky. It just doesn't make sense why they're kind of, I understand the focus on PvE, but there's just nothing for PvP. There's no incentive even for PvPers almost.
One of the things to moving on with the topics but still keeping it related to this, TP is a system that is just kind of weird that it still exists. TP is just a damaging, like all of the utility that was attached to TP skills, the TP passives were put onto Talismans. So for the most part, with a very, very few exceptions, TP is just damage increases. But they still have 2 TP locked behind the PvP quest. It's supposed to get removed eventually, but it's still the case that to get 2 TP, you have to go through the whole PvP system, and because it's just not fun and it's really annoying to get into, and just PvP is just not well designed, honestly, for like it doesn't have a good introduction for players. A lot of people just skip it, or they wait for the skip ticket. Or now that we know that the quest is being replaced or removed, that's all they're waiting for. They're never going to enter PvP because this TP quest has made it very annoying for them. So TP as a whole has kind of been a bit of a bad deal, and it especially, Zeno brings up a point that like for some people who have base classes, you can't do PvP anymore. So you can't do the TP quest. What? Why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Also, some of the characters, like, when you try to PvP on a character that you're not used to, it's really, really, it doesn't feel good when you're not getting anywhere. And then all of the PvP AI operate on the same principle of they will approach you directly and they will combo you until the little marker on your health bar that will force you to fall. Every single PvP AI follows the same thing, unless they're broken like Battle Mage. The problem with this is that a lot of players will look at that and they'll try to PvP or try to do the combo that they were just taught that isn't necessarily a good opening combo, and then watch for the next 2 minutes as they get constantly juggled. no one wants to even bother consider this piece of content if it's like they're forced upon it and then it's not engaging in any way. So
Yeah, I
knowing
think
that,
that
so go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, I just think the start is they need to build a whether they get a content creator to do it or they get players to involve themselves. They have to build this form of like a section for PvP that new players, returning PvEers, anyone who wants to like pick up the game isn't being taught by the community by getting their butts whooped for like a straight 2 3 hours or 5 days before they're like, aha, it clicks now, right? And like we have a great training room, but the problem is like that's not useful if they don't even know what they're looking to start with, which I agree. So I mean, I think it starts there if we want to even see any growth. I'm not even going to get into the more bigger issues, but I think that's a major issue for the audience to start.
Hmm.
I just want to bring up something that's kind of like very tangentially related. I don't know if any of you guys are Marvel versus Capcom fans, but
I do play.
yeah. So you probably heard then about Justin Wong scaring people into refunding the Capcom Fighting
Yep.
Collection
Yeah, there's no
solely over
training for that.
NBC2.
There's no good training for that. It's just get your butt whipped. But I mean, that's an old school game too, right? But I feel like there's a stronger community and there's more content out there where it's we don't really have like we have some content, but it's all hidden. Like I've even tried to, you know, center all that information where people can learn. But it's like, how do I tell somebody who doesn't have Discord, you know, or that's a PvE or who's not in the Discord for PvP stuff, right? How do you get them into it? Not everybody wants to join another Discord if they already have 30 Discords. That's the hard
Yeah,
part
I mean that's
Hmm.
what we were talking about earlier with the um like
with
rating
the,
stuff.
yeah, like voice
Because
chat would be helpful.
yeah,
Hmm. Um, it's yeah, it yeah. So, um, uh, okay,
sorry, I had to get up for a second.
yeah. But we did talk about in-game VC. It was a topic that basically like it's not a factor for our server because we have Discord, and that was stated on stream.
What
Excuse me.
what if they found a way to now I know this is a little bit of a stretch because they probably don't need to do this. But even if let's say people were to at least be able to connect their Discord to the game itself, I know it probably creates a lot more issues possibly, but I feel like maybe even that's an option if like to encourage people to get Discord and be able to if they wanted to, right? If we didn't want to just do base voice chat and just have molding all the time, maybe even implementing Discord where, you know, you can give the link in game or like a quick link where people could use a guest link to just kind of come in and like listen to the voice chat or be able to speak just for
Yeah,
the
that's
momentary.
what I do for. I just have my invite link on my guild description, and that's about as close as I'm going to get to somebody listening to me yapping about the gimmicks in game.
Hmm. I think that's yeah. And mentioned one thing: certain
True.
places just don't have access to Discord, but it's
Yeah.
basically asking someone to communicate, and as Anne mentioned before when talking about it, some people just don't want to ever. They want to play their game and they don't want to talk to people. So it's more of a community effort or like a social effort to get people to use Discord than it is to kind of try and get it integrated into the game in some form or fashion.
Yeah, usually to those people, I'm like, yeah, I will try to type the gimmicks to you, and it's like, I'm not that great of a typist, so your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I'd imagine for PvEers, that's like I've watched raids and I've seen like the main raid person trying to communicate with the four different groups and then type out hundreds of things while at the same time like and then it's getting all divvied up, right? And it gets a little chaotic even for the person trying to understand. I wish I could really love PvE as much as you guys do and I see the same, some of the same faults and gripes, or even other gripes that we don't have in PvP. But it sucks that universally you guys have to struggle and see how we struggle, and it shouldn't happen from both ends. I think it should be healthier on the PvE side. I think they're trying to get it to that point, but there's just has to be some type of bridge, and I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something down the road they really need to think about.
Tortuga mentioned basically text to speech. I mean, sure, but the problem is getting people to use it.
I mean, Tortuga, put it this way: how many years did it take for them to put color blindness options into the game?
Oh boy. And they just added controller support, which is even crazier. So,
like, yeah. Koreans and accessibility don't really, get along with each other.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying not to just ramble, because I have on my head, I'm just like, damn, dude, it sucks that PvP just really struggles, but I kind of get it. And even with the support that's being handed out, it just feels like we're getting that tail end of it, even when we're telling them what the issues are to bring in. And I've always told them, I said, you have to give people, even with PvE, this applies to everything. If you want people to keep playing the game, you have to give things that not everyone can obtain, but everybody can fight to obtain, right? Whether it comes around once a month, every 6 months, 3 months, but that's a really, really big issue for them. And I don't understand why, because in mere seconds, you've seen it, Con, where all I said was, we need to do that. And they were like, okay, well, here's a title that you cannot obtain unless you enter my tournaments, right? So it's but that title does nothing for PvE. So it's
it's just a cosmetic.
Yeah, and
now I don't know if we were here for when we're talking about the challenge dungeon things, but there are, from the looks of it, planning to add a challenge content element for content that is not meant for progression, but it's just meant for pure challenge. I think that to some degree they understand that people want cosmetic stuff. I mean, we are Dress Up Fighter Online more than we are Dungeon Fighter Online. So having cosmetic options available to people is a really big incentive, but at least for PvP, in KDNF, their incentive for doing it is getting the motion aura, the unique motion aura. We don't have that. Unique motion auras comes from our now it's going to be the Arcane Mystic box, or I think they need to just make it part of a Sarah Shop sale. It's just given to us because not enough people participate in PvP for there to be a reward for doing so. So having it, promoting Mezza and his tournaments, they're really fun. A lot of people really enjoy them. Having a reward incentive attached to that is a really, really good idea. But having a reward attached to PvP at large would be a much better idea, because it'd get more people to do it, even if there's just try it out. Even if there are roadblocks like there are now because of the TP system and because of the really not great combo practice system, an incentive can get people to get over that. An incentive can get people to discover ways or create ways to help people get over that. But there is no incentive now. So hopefully when they're unfortunately, none of these previews seem to have anything to do with PvP in any sense. It would be very nice of them to at least just try to include it. But if their intent is to provide us with some form of non-progression challenge content, they can make that. They can do that for PvP. They can expand it in PvP.
I've always kind of had this idea in my head that they should just if nothing else, you should get PvP mats from just fighting the bots, even if it's at a lower rate than actually fighting people in ranked.
Yeah, I feel like just because, at least in our version, because ranked is dead.
Ranked is dead. Yeah.
There's no sugarcoating it. Ranked is dead. They should make the quest completable in practice arena. That way, because a lot of people it doesn't matter what time really you play DFO. You can go into 101 and there'll be rooms and be people playing. There's people playing PvP
I'm not even like
all
talking
day.
about the TP
No, but
thing,
you're
like
talking about like there's just doing
the
the
arena
like
pods.
yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, like people are PvPing constantly, but there would be more people PvPing if there was a stronger incentive to just even go fight your friends. Just screw around for like 20 minutes just having fun. Like if they're going to incentivize PvE, if they're going to create content that incentivizes you to go do challenge content, that should be reflected across all forms of gameplay, including PvP.
I would like to see them bring in, which I think is a good way to do PvP right now, because at least for global, guilds are really big things. So I think having guilds fight guilds would be more incentivized for rewarding, because anyone can join a guild, right? But like I feel like that's a really, really, really strong suit, because telling a solo player to go play and get, do bots or do anything like that, they're probably just gonna make another account and have and have another computer and just farm it, right? Which
Right.
is what we're trying to avoid. But making guild members fight each other and they all have to be active, like you have to have a 4v4 with your guild members, or a 2v2 or something like that against another guild, and that doesn't even have to necessarily be ranked, but it has to be like in a practice match, right? So it has to have maximum this amount of guild members, right? That to me would incentivize a lot of PvEers to be like, well, you know what? We've already done enough of this. Instead of like, this is not a raid day. Why don't we just go do some PvPing together, and we'll still get something out of it, right? Instead of, which I hear is always the sentiment is, I'm tired of playing my like 16th character that I don't have enough XYZ for to do this. So I'm just basically wasting my time just, burning the FP just to burn it, and then eventually can't do anything with it for the week or two, right? So I think that also gives incentive for guilds to kind of just like people and players from other aspects to really join in. And then guess what? Now you have PvEers and PvPers all going like, hey, let's just get something going. It'd be fun.
Mm.
Yeah, they seem to be of the opinion that the incentives have to strictly be PvE exclusive. Like the one what was the thing called oxidized substance from years ago.
Yeah.
God.
That's the only
Never heard
time
of that
that
Uh,
one.
they've ever tied PvP to PvE, and nobody likes that shit.
You could do it by doing what was it? What Tower was it? Just Tower of the Dead, the original Tower of the Dead.
Yeah,
I don't
Tower
remember.
Dead.
You could
Yeah.
get it from those floors that had the APCs, but you were limited in how many you could get. So like, that wasn't fun. Um, but
Or you know what? Just make a mode where you can tag along with your friend in PvP, and you could fight other like NPCs together, because we don't have anything like that either.
yeah,
And then you're not losing alone; you're losing together.
yeah, I think your
You
two
just
v
need to. I'm sorry, dude.
your 2v2 tournament kind of really showed that off.
Yeah, I
So
think that was a big thing. I think people like to not lose by themselves. So yeah, some type of mode. As much as like we don't get all the same updates as Korea, I think we have to have kind of global content dedicated to us, even if we miss out on, let's say, a patch for 6 months, just to try to revitalize some of the community, and being putting the attention to something that would reinvigorate everybody, other than here's the new content that Korea's had for like 4 or 5 months. Don't worry, you're getting it now. Because I'm pretty sure people have already watched it, they played it, and then they're just like, okay, that was it. We like blew through it in like less than a week.
you know what's kind of funny is that the PvP mini games that they introduced, like Monster Coliseum, Monster Fighter, even that card game they had very briefly, like many years ago. People love that stuff. They love doing that kind of PvP. The Othello was fun as well. But it's just weird that the actual PvP in the game is the one that people want to avoid. Um,
Well, yeah, because the way the PvP is now, it kind of reminds me of like really really old fighting games where just everyone's like, oh, just ranked ladder and that's it, and that's all anybody ever wanted. So if you were a casual, just go elsewhere, you filthy casual.
mm.
I definitely will say I feel like when I'm playing at least PvP with people, I'm like, man, I feel bad for people who just join these lobbies because it's like six, people in their basement just beating each other up for hours. And then somebody new comes in and they're like, hey, I want to learn. And they're like, oh, sit down, grab the sticks. It's about to get bad. So,
Hmm.
and I get it. Look, as a fighting game player of like 13 plus years, the goal is I want new people, but I also want you to, you know, I want to introduce you to the realization that I want to make you quit, but I really don't want you to quit. I just want you to get better by make you feel like you need to quit.
Hmm.
It's a crazy mentality.
Whereas, actually, no, never mind. I'm not going to mention it. But
I kind of want
it's
to hear. But
it's like there was a big I don't know if I can call it a schism, but there's like a big difference in like FGC attitude before and after the Xbox One Killer Instinct,
yep.
because Killer Instinct kind of like codified like the whole we're gonna have all these robust PvE game modes, and we don't care if you don't like them or not. So I think Killer Instinct's thing was they had a roguelite game mode called Shadow Lords, where it's kind of a bit like DFO, really. Like you had gear, you had items, and you fought opponents that had RPG stats and everything. And then there was also what the hell was the game called? Like Grand Blue Fantasy Versus had an RPG mode also. So, I mean, like the point is that like there needs to be more casual content, like even in PvP.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
I
like
mean, the
combo
way I
trials
would
would be
see it,
nice. Like a
the,
combo trials like KOF, like I get it. There's gonna be hard stuff, but like you want the challenge, you want something fun too at the same time. You want to see if you can do it before your friend does. I'll kind of because I do have to go, but I'll leave it on this note. I think the one thing that really helped drive the community to at least open up that door is people being open minded that PvPers still play PvE. We're not opposed to it. There's a lot that do, but and, there's even more who are getting into it now. But it does hurt when PvEers do sit around and be like PvP is dead. There's nothing there. And, it is strongly incentivized, at least for me and my side of the part of the community, to try to open up that gate and that door to, you know, any PvEers to try to like just ask questions. And if you don't understand it, I know it's a different game in a sense, but we can't expect them to just change stuff for them. But I would love it if like the questions were asked instead of just saying, "Well, it's dead. Don't play it," right? Because then that discourages other people. Because like I would always say, how would people feel if we were just like as PvPers, like, "Well, PvE is dead. Don't play it. Don't touch it." It'd just be like, "Damn, that's messed up. What if we just pushed away like 100 people, right?" So
I mean, the simplest way they can do that is just you like I said before, like the PvP mats, like they should just be rewarded in varying amounts for doing anything PvP related, even if it's just like two people farming off each other.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it doesn't come down
yeah.
to that, but
I mean, you should
Oh,
get PvP rewards for getting mind controlled in a raid and killing your friends.
it's
oh,
because
oh.
it's like I think back to like I mean some of the Blaze Blue games did this where they had like a currency, or actually DNF Duel also does this where just doing anything in the game will get you currency for buying stuff like gallery pictures or alternate colors or
Although
just
that
random crap like that.
that currency does nothing in DNF.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, dude, after you bought everything, there's nothing else in the game to use that currency for. We've been
Yeah,
playing for
like
2-3 years. It's
like
pointless
I
after a
got the
while.
game on for free during the free period and then never bothered to boot it up, so I'm just talking out of my ass here.
No, you're good. I mean, you did use it for mostly like buying gallery stuff, but it's like after that in colors and whatnot, you're just like, oh, I bought my avatars, I bought everything I want. Um, the other thing I was gonna say was nothing about latency or anything like that. Uh, I was just gonna say I think that it, damn, I lost it, man. It was so good too. It'll probably come to me one day. Don't worry about it.
Right, that's what happens. You'll remember in 15 minutes.
I know, right? When it actually could be useful now. It's fine though.
Yeah. But I think like in general, like the incentivizing content is something that they it sounds like they plan to do, but something they really, really should be. If they're not considering it for PvP, they should be considering it for PvP.
Oh, I remember it now.
Ah, perfect.
If they really want people who are struggling to deal with like getting juggled for years and hours, if they want to make the game playable, people like interaction. As we talk about this a lot with fighting games, make it similar to mobile. Mobile has so many more interactions. You can't just one touch people. You can't two touch people. You generally have to actually like 3 to 4 touch people. So I feel like if they really want to incentivize people playing PvP and enjoying it a little bit more and feeling like they have an opportunity to not just, get blasted by Berserker or someone or a reset, just balance it like the mobile game.
You know what's the craziest thing? Like when PvE first got enhanced backstep, I was surprised to learn that that's not a thing in PvP at all.
It's unique to some
like,
characters. Crazy,
whatever.
right? It's unique to some characters.
Oh, what the hell, really?
Yup.
Because
Just wild.
what I was thinking is like PvP kind of needs an element of like burst baiting in like Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear. Imagine how PvP would be where you just bait somebody into doing an enhanced backstep out of a possible combo, and they just eat another combo anyway because they timed it wrong.
Damn, I really don't want to stay on PvP too long because I know you guys got so much to cover. I just want to say this one thing. Dude, they got to work on the whole concept of if you're going to make a game that has a triangle, the triangle effect, which is, if something beats something and something beats something else, then they actually have to do that. So, if strike is supposed to be grabs and super armor is supposed to beat strikes and grabs beat super armor, that has to actually do that.
Like
it can't be like yeah, it can't be like, oh, grab just decided I wanted to be attacked today. And I know that's because of other reasons, but we even see it on LAN. It still kind of just gets wonky. So I think they need to, like I said, if anything, I will show them the frame data. They need to work around that.
Right now, PvP is a Kusoge, and they're fine with that.
Dude, it's Casino Royale out there, okay? You guys are in the casino. We're actually playing the casino. It's crazy. I don't know why we do it to ourselves. Love of the game, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, not to hold you up any longer, thank you for your insight about PvP. It is helpful to have it because, PvE is what most people are here for, but PvP still exists. So it'd be a good idea to have them be aware of the fact that PvP is affected by changes and the factors in PvE.
Also, we can't rely on F1 to be the only thing that people look forward to. It just can't be a thing, dude. I'm sorry. I gotta say it. It can't be a thing. I love them for it, but either it has to be confirmed earlier and they need to really kind of press that, or they need to start implementing their own ideas, right? Because I'm doing my own. I can't say that they're going to do something that they should, but it can't be supported only in half the scene and not the rest. And if they can't do it for us, they need to do it for others. All right. Go get into the talismans. I'm going to leave you guys be now because I'll go on forever.
All right. Thank you, Mezza.
All right. Thank you guys for letting me talk. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
To answer Zero real quick, I don't know where he went. He's probably sleeping in another room. If he comes back, you'll know. But Afro was bringing up talismans being integrated into base skills. Yes, that was one of the things that they listed in the skill changes. What they were considering adding maintaining pre-existing options in talismans. They didn't say how they were going to work. They even showed a couple new skill change examples. You can click on the link into the document to see what those changes are. But some of them are interesting. Some of them don't go in the right direction that people want. For example, like Blade Master's Omnislay Shooting Star. They changed it to an install skill that drops the swords in front of him. That looks cool, but Slaying Star is currently being used as like a 3-second iframe.
Iframe.
Yeah, so if it has the option to either be an actual damaging skill or being an iframe, I think having that option be retained is a good thing. But the kind of concern becomes like, how exactly are they going to implement these talismans? How many of them are going to become optional changes versus how many are going to be just like integrated into the skill baseline because the quality of life is just too good to have. So it really remains to be seen with what they plan to do with those changes. But to talk about talismans, I know that talismans are going away. They already stated that was the plan with them. But currently, talismans have. I mean, like, since talismans have been introduced, they actually introduced a pretty big problem in the game that they focused skill choice quite harshly. You would kind of just mainly use the skills, or you would focus skills that got talismans. And so, I mean, even when 100 cap, we had talisman shoe. We had, like, even you would use broken builds with talisman shoe specifically because the effect was just so strong. Yeah, the new shooting star, it looks cool, but I mean, again, the question kind of becomes, is even if this looks cool, it's just are like, is the cool factor more important than the actual like functionality of the skill? So it's just a matter of like what can be used. But some of the problems with talismans have been that the quality of life they provide is way too much. Like, we can use Vigilante as an example. Brand new class has you have to, like, if you're using Beast Wind, you have to use a talisman. Beast Wind is a tornado, because what the skill does normally is that it will suck things into it. It's a static tornado that will just suck all enemies into it. But if you get the talisman, it will track enemies. Bosses can't be affected by pulls or like suction effects, so the base version of the skill can't really be used too well because it won't affect bosses. And bosses now move around a lot, so you can't really rely on just dropping tornado in a good spot and it giving you and it being able to do all of its damage. The talisman makes it track, which is absurd because she already has so many skills that track enemies. But on top of it, it also gives meter. It also improves her meter, or like it like gives meter energy, or whatever you want to call it, like meter count. It increases it, and that's not really a good thing because that makes it so that like using the skill actually affects your ability to use other skills. And that just kind of makes the skill way too important. You're adding so much quality of life to the skill baseline that it makes it far more important to use the skill than to like, use the talisman than to actually like kind of experiment with the base skill.
Yeah, the stupid thing about the talisman systems, like I said this before back when they launched them.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, we good. Okay.
The thing that I found really stupid with talismans, even back when they released, was that you're essentially farming your quality of life patch, and it's kind of ridiculous to see that they're still going that route, like even in this cap with the new archers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it shouldn't have taken until the most recent update for them to make it so that runes were like the rune colors were decided if you could actually use the full talisman effect.
Chromatic orbs in PoE.
So I actually brought up like a very good point here. Like, talisman. The very first time I saw talisman, like I always saw it like a lot of fantasy is like, why couldn't this be just be like the base of a class? Because like this is especially this feels like it's just too important to not have it. Like it's like something that like you have to, for them to even function at all.
Cough, Shadow Step.
A lot of them, yes. Or then like just a lot. That's like a lot of like customers. It's just like they want to actually like mandatory because of like KOL, and they are way too important to not take it. And so like, it's always I always see Talisman as just like a balance patch being locked behind content.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, you're just farming your balance.
Those kind of stuff, it just like sucks. Like why why you have to grind for you to actually like even like play the game, and that's just like does not make sense.
Mm-hmm. I know there would be some people who, because re-rolling talisman colors is such a pain in the ass, they would just try to get the talisman. That was their main goal. Like, just having the talisman is far more important than getting the rune color options. But something that I did not add here because I completely skipped my mind is that right now the runes have a major impact on skill use because they provide so much cooldown reduction to your main damaging skill. Like, what is going to be the case that what is it? It's almost 20%. It's not 20% CDR. What is it?
35. If you rock both green and blues, it's like 35%.
Which is honestly absurd. So having that much cooldown reduction that you can apply to your main damaging skill just be taken away once they remove talismans is a pretty, like, it doesn't feel good because you're not sure if this, it's going to change how skill flow works entirely, because that skill, being able to use it frequently, that the skill that you're focusing on, that is centric to your character design, is centric to character identity. It's centric to player choice. It's what you decide you want your character to be. And having that major, like, identifying factor, which is really being able to use a skill a lot, taken away, is not a good feeling. And it being a mystery because they say they're planning to integrate talisman effects, but we don't know to what extent, is something that is going to be a major concern, because we want to, like, use the skill we like a lot. We want to use it a lot, but not having the ability to do so and just being kind of shoved back into our normal skill list of and being less accessible is something that will be not as fun to people.
Maybe I'm just the weird one here, but like I'd rather, like, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that happen, like going away from this hyper focus on like one skill, because I'm just like, ever since that started happening in 100 cap with the talisman shoes, I'm like, great, I'm getting like Vietnam flashbacks to PoE.
To answer Afro's question, do you think they will remove the 3 tally limit and just let it use them all? I think the intent is to completely remove talismans altogether, and do something.
At least keeping like the one that is actually very important to class.
I believe the example, or at least the version that people were looking at, is what's the case in DNF Mobile, which is where you have basically a toggleable passive that can affect a limited number of skills in your skill tree that give them a different function. So they would just integrate talismans into the skill tree, so where certain skills will have, you will have a limited number of skills you can toggle to have an additional or changed function, and that is your limit. So it's, instead of it being 3 talismans, it would be like you can change the function of 4 or 5 skills or something like that. It's not clear because they haven't provided any detail on this, even in the preview. The only thing is it only was talking about changing what looked like the skill animation and operation, but we're not sure what that means. Like, one of the things they showed off was Ashura's Magma Wave sword. Magma Wave is normally you slap the sword on the ground, there's a big full fiery explosion. Cool. Or you get the talisman, and I believe it's, or no, that was the old Magma Wave sword. The new Magma Wave sword is like the 3 fire bursts.
Fireball.
And then the talisman is just 1 burst. And then this planned change is it's just a strike to the sky. What is it what is it hitting? What would be the change for that? Like, are you hitting something that's super tall? So it's like, is that going to have a use? Are we going to eventually have boss fights or dungeons where there's enemies that are in the air and we need to have like an anti-air skill?
Oh my god. Flashbacks to that goblin in the chandelier with the summoner. Oh god.
Thank you, has for fire wave sword, not magma. Okay. So yeah. So if they make changes to these skills, what exactly are they changing, and what exactly are like what is the accessibility that we're going to have to be able to kind of experiment with those changes? I think that's a major question, because I made a very important question. Sorry, because this whole talisman system, as kind of annoying as it's been, has been really good to kind of help people feel like they can find certain aspects of the character they enjoy, find and push certain aspects of the character they enjoy the most. So, like, for example, I like the level 45 skill on Vigilante. It's the spinny fall thing. I love that. It looks cool. Thanks for being here, and sorry it's been going on for so long. Thank you for being here. I want to continue like focusing on that, but if they make it so it's difficult to focus on that, I feel like it's going to lower my interest in playing the character. And I think that Talismans have kind of created a weird way of saying that, like, certain aspects of the character are more targeted for what they want people to play with, rather than what people like feel like they can just experiment and do whatever they want with.
It's honestly feels like basically the whole entire thing with this whole entire cap. It's just like, you know, a lot of classes just only have to lock in into like a single like, you know, skill range level, and so like, you know, oftentimes like, you know, when you want to play like this different like skill, you know, different like skill range, but you know, the other class is just way more optimal run by the other one. It just like also kind of just creates that effect too. Is that like, you know, I want to sticking with this like, this like, you know, this like skill range that I want to go for, but you know, available is just way better. So like, you know, what's the point? It makes it kind of sense, you know, to the game, and basically same thing with how like we like there's just been like a lot of like targeting onto like, you know, a single skill on a lot of classes, and just like some of the skills just kind of like being left in the dust.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's because like the like some classes also have like super hyper focused, super duper good talismans, and if you're not taking it, you're bagging.
You actually mean like that's epic right there. Like if you,
Like-
you actually don't take Falcon, you're just bagging it there. Like
Yeah, I was going to go exactly at that point. Like,
Then
if you're epic and you're not taking GSP Falcon, well, what are you doing with your class?
like I would really like to go back to the old like Sparrow stacking Spanging Bone, but
But
they
you
just
can't
knew it
because
that
you're backing.
they're bagging, yeah, because Falcon is just way too strong. Like, you know, I want to play Sparrow. I want to have a swarm of just little birds flying around me, and then just having just shoot whatever they see. But no, it just go on Falcon now, I guess.
And even if you did manage to like change, like, you know, you circumvent everything and you have hyper focus on your gear, you probably still would deal less damage.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just like, what's the point in winning that? Then if we can, like, you know, why playing the class when you can't even play can even use your most favorite skill?
It's like
just like-
SAs like not getting Shadow Step Talisman.
Yeah, literally same.
Yeah. So, hopefully their intent to change with skills is to kind of make it so that we can still use skills that we really like, but they aren't as as like severely impacted by the loss of talismans.
What I would hope is that what they do is like they give us good options on everything without kneecapping like what the talismans originally provided for us. Because like we don't have any details on what they're actually going to do, right? It's just a mention of like, yeah, we're just revamping stuff.
Right.
And look at, if you can scroll to the talisman page, Khan.
Here?
No, to the talisman section. Yeah. They're saying that, yeah, some talismans were designed so poorly. Why would they design something poorly in the first place if the whole point of it was to improve the skill?
Dark Knight ISD Talisman.
Some skills are just straight downgrade sometimes, so it's just like, you know, why is that a thing?
Multi headshot on SA. Why would anyone take his level at 80? Jesus.
Like like the Dark Knight's ISD talisman is a good example because it's not at all like Weapon Master's ISD talisman. Like it literally makes it have more recovery. So what it usually does is that it's just a bog standard clone of the Weapon Master ISD, but when you have the talisman on, um, he does some silly little thing where like the wave that he shoots out is instead his version of Outrage Break, and then he does like a gimped version of his level 80 at the end of it.
I think
Energy
And
on Talisman on Specialist.
it's like why is this a thing? Like even if I wanted to build for this skill, it's like I'm making the casting time of this skill even longer.
they actually for a short period of time, Dark Knights were using the 45 tally.
Yeah, I mean, but that was like back in 100 cap.
No, it was in
No,
it
what
was in 110k.
like around
Oh,
around
okay.
like I think like when the first time like Betrayed was introduced, when like we have like
Yeah,
the actual
when
we actually skill tag for like 45 skill,
yeah
and
when
that was
the
like pretty nice from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
when-
was the first iteration of the trade system.
yeah that iteration gave a lot of power to level 45s. We never actually got to experience the height of that trait system. If I remember
Okay.
correctly,
Well,
but
I would like not for an MF for that dude. That's,
yeah,
like,
it was
square off of 11.
it was kind of interesting because we got it and then like not even I want to say like not even a month after we got that trade system, they got revamped and we're like, okay, none of us are gonna get to actually experience this in the way that like in any form or fashion.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
kind of
this is that for sure. It's just like scrap. I mean, like it was really too, but like it just like scrap that and then to do something that's like I guess that even like it is more streamlined and much more simple to understand, but like it missing that kind of like uniqueness that like the old trade was.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna get it back into this final point. I,
oh boy.
Sorry to say, like I just wanted to point out that like we've been going for almost 3 hours, so I don't want to hold people up too much longer. I greatly appreciate everyone being here for people who have been here for the entire time. Thank you so much, but I don't want to hold up to people for much too longer. So we're gonna get into this final point, which is about the avatar and title skill options. So what they had stated in the dev talk is that they recognize that skills on like skill effects on titles and avatars, specifically I believe it was on so it was for titles it was like the 10% damage to one skill of that effect, and then for the avatars I believe it was I don't know if it's talking about emblems, but I believe it was emblems is what they were referring to, or it might be weapons, the rare clone weapons that have +1 to a certain skill, but these had a negative effect of one, they're premium items, so you have to pay for them in some form or fashion, either buying it from someone else with gold or money, Sarah. But it basically created an artificial sense of focusing on that specific skill. If you have 10% damage on your skill that you use more than any other, yeah, that's going to have a pretty impactful effect on your damage rotation, your damage output. That skill should be more than likely should be number one, or should at the very least be your highest damaging skill. But then changing it is really, really difficult, and we kind of saw this when we had the entire skills, like when we had one of our first balance pass changes. It's really, this trait system was also, the original version of the trait system was a good example of this as well, where so many people had the option of changing their skill focus, but we didn't have, or at least I believe it wasn't the case for KDNF, and it wasn't the case for us either, that we had this major option change available to us, but we didn't have any kind of way of changing the focus on our titles or avatars. So a lot of people just didn't change their focus. They just never bothered to try and do that because it would have been such an expensive change to begin with. So KDF kind of recognized that this was a problem, and I believe, or sorry, Neil recognizes this problem. In KDNF, they have completely removed their. They didn't remove it. They made it the ability to change the skill options on titles and avatars. They made it free. And this kind of implies that they don't want to have skills be affected by avatars or by premium items because that will restrict builds. Hopefully this means that that's the case, but I don't know when we'll get that. I don't know what time we'll be getting that, but that was a pretty annoying aspect of gearing when it's tied to a premium item.
I mean, like, that is just great because, like, yeah, like I'm actually at a point where I can actually try like many different builds, but I just really can't because, like, you know, I have this skill tile and my record weapon being targeted to one skill and then one shadow skill. Well, two sucks because, like, well, I'm always stuck on that when then what's the point? Like, you know, like say my Dragon Knight, I've been, you know, running the voice skill on the tile and the record weapon, and, you know, I wanted to try the Sandy mode, but I really can't because, like, that would just, you know, not worth it because, like, it just make it worse. Like right now, like, both 75 and 4 are about equal, but, you know, but the difference in between, like, the skill level increase and the actual skill type on the tile is enough of a deal breaker for me to not actually, like, not even trying it because, like, it's just simply just worse. Simply, like, you know, then well I can't really change that either because, like, well, it costs too much, dude. Like a whole entire record weapon and a you know, new boost tile. Nah, well, that's not happening.
Yeah. Like I wanted when FNet excuse me, when she gets her sprite update, she also gets an update to her level 45 skill, and I think that the change looks really cool, but I don't have a level 45 title, and I don't have a level 45 rare clone weapon. I'm not going to be able to experience this, like, hopefully we get it before that happens, like we get this change before that happens, but it's not going to feel like it's going to have as much of an impact if I'm not able to kind of, if I have this restriction just improving one of my other skills, instead of allowing me to have kind of like open ability to change it. What I would like to see with this case is just give all those skills 10% increased damage and just remove the effect in the title. We aren't, if people are not aware, they said that any plans for having I believe they said that any plans for having a new best slot title would be moved to the next season, where this effect will go, because the skill change will be in the next season. We're not going to see a new best in slot title because it would have these effects on them. It would be ideal to have this change be brought as early as possible because, like as Jeppy said, it would give us more experimentation, but it would also let us kind of like see what they plan to do with titles and really what they plan to do with skill options on avatars, because it has had such a big impact on skill choice and kind of like player experimentation already. So, okay. I'll give just a moment for... Oh, okay. Yes. Culmination Weapons are... Yeah. That honestly could have been brought up with the talisman thing. The reason I didn't bring that up. That's really just completely slipped my mind. The problem with Culmination Weapons is that I feel like some of them have a really cool concept and others just don't make any sense at all. And like they didn't...
They're broken.
Yeah,
Right.
and others are completely broken, like Male Grappler and Rolling Spike. But like an example I can use is with my main, which is Impaler. The culmination makes it so that once you build up enough of a charge, one that's not a good concept, it's annoying. When you use Dark Star, it drops all the lances at once. Oh no, sorry. No, yeah. It'll drop all the lances at once. And then it has an extra effect where if you have, I think, like the full charge, it'll drop a big lance. You know what happens when you put it with the talisman that affects Dark Star? Nothing. There's no special effect for it being part of the talisman. The talisman makes it so that Dark Star has a bigger range. And
I mean,
and then you can explode it once you then it'll have a bigger range. The lances stay on the ground, and then if you attack the lances, it'll explode. This has no interaction with the culmination weapon, and I feel like that's such a major like oversight because it would made it give people the possibility of using the Dark Star talisman if it even had an effect, like some kind of relation or like some kind of connection to the talisman. But no, it doesn't. They don't. They can work together fine, but there's no benefit for using the talisman if you want to use a culmination weapon.
Then you have something like Specialist Culmination. It's just so.
It's stupid. That one is stupid for specialists.
It's so broken.
Yeah.
And then there's some just like basically the same gameplay wise, like a combination. Like every time you explode with robots, it will spawn with smaller mini robots, and it can actually like detonate them again. But the thing is that like you're already kind of doing that anyway, so like it's just like more of the same kind of stuff, and just like I wish like there's actually like something more out of it, but it's just like literally the same, bro.
What?
Just,
You know, it's kind of.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just like more of the same gameplay wise for against MMAC because like it just does like this doesn't really change anything. Like the whole point of like culmination weapon is is to provide like say like a very different like gameplay style, but a lot of them just doesn't really do that much. Which for against MMAC it is like it just does nothing for them gameplay wise.
What's kind of funny is I think a lot of people just completely overlooked the culmination weapons for Vigilante and Hunter. I don't have a Hunter, so I don't know what her culmination weapon is. But for Vigilante, her culmination weapon makes it so that all of her human skills generate meter. Sorry. It's all of her cat skills will generate meter. And that's just like a huge beneficial change in the character. It means that whenever you're using skills, you're generating more. You're able to use your other skills. It provides a very nice quality of life to being able to like actually maneuver through the character that's constantly transforming, but you don't use it. It's just the effect is not enough in comparison to just amount of damage that is provided by the spec weapon or now the Mu weapons.
Yeah.
The point of the Culm weapons is we always had two options. I think we've always had two weapon options for each character. It might have even been a holdover from 100 cap where we had two options, but each character always had like two weapons for that level cap that they could choose between. And it was really the option between one that was way too strong and the other that was just kind of not really that great, or they were the exact same. So I think it's just like their attempt at providing some kind of like option when picking weapon. Like you could choose to have a possibly weaker weapon to have a more interesting effect, but it worked for some characters and it completely failed for others.
Like a lot of like comb weapons are like very interesting, but a lot of them are just too weak compared to Aspen weapon. And just like and that is just a huge shame.
Mm-hmm.
Like personally, really like Dragon Knight's comb weapon actually. Like I really love Dragon Warrior versions, and it is fun for me. It's a fun skill, and you actually get to spam it with the comb weapon, but it's just too weak, dude. It's just not worth running comb when you can just run aspect for far more damage gain. It's like for her case, I think it's like what a 10, like a whole entire 10% damage diff, and that's a lot.
It's kind of funny because you can compare the charge, the culminations that give skills charges. So, you have Dragon Knight, where Troubleshooter is another one, I believe. But you have Dragon Knight where you get 2 charges to Dragon Warrior Princess, and that reduces the damage of it by 50%, I think, or 40%.
By 40%, so it's technically like a 20% damage gain for skill.
Which is huge when you compare it to Male Grappler, who does not get a damage reduction. If I remember correctly, I don't believe he gets a damage reduction on Rolling Spike. He just gets 2 charges. So how is that like fair? Do they not consider? Do they consider Dragon Knight so much stronger than Male Grappler that they have to not give it a damage reduction? Necromancer, Necromancer, her culmination weapon makes Living Dead, which is the Gothic Lolita zombie. Instead of vomiting, that zombie explodes, and you get 3 charges, and the damage is reduced by 45%. I mean, why is that reduced by so much? It just seems kind of very strange. Like the options that they gave that they had just seem very strange in what the kind of effects they provide. Like the characters that have I guess you could call it a meter that they have to build up, like some kind of like power or something they have to build up for their culmination effect to go off. Like Impaler and Shadow Dancer, the effects of that, the payoff for charging up is not equal at all. It doesn't make any sense. So I would like that. Like, I think what a lot of people who I've talked to, they like their culmination option. It's just they don't like the fact that it's tied to a weapon rather than tied to something else.
It's also weird that the culmination is specifically focusing on those skills, but they nerf the skill's damage instead of actually boosting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot. I mean, like it's technically like gain in some cases, but like the gain overall is just not very worth compared to just getting radiation on like literally everything else.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think a lot of the culmination weapons are just a ton of fun, but it's just not easy to use them, and we unfortunately are in a like it is a community related thing that we don't really like given a chance to these effects, because the damage loss is just kind of too much in some cases.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think culmination weapons should be included in the skill consideration. It wasn't part of the, from what I'm looking here, I
don't think it was.
It wasn't, yeah. It's just no mention of it. So hopefully it is considered, because some of those are a ton of fun. And all right, Tony. Thanks for hanging out. You have a good one. But Jeppy. I hope so. I think it, like, the 2 weapon thing has been a thing for so long that I wouldn't. I would hope that they would continue doing it.
Yeah, having options is good, but like, try to balance the 2 options in between to not making one too dominant over the other, and that would be great.
My hope is that they tie some of the culmination effects into the class's baseline skills.
That would be great too.
Like, I mean, why is it like the whole thing with my class, the use your intention stacks to get 20% CDR a thing?
Honestly, like that is such a missed opportunity for him too. Like,
I mean, like,
without the co-op, without the co weapon, he's just like, the like intention stack that doesn't like do anything, just like extra holds, which holds are kind of dead. So is the core weapon is just like, it's definitely like really like refreshing too, and honestly should have done something about it too.
I would like that, like I think they should have. Technically, this cap we've had what 7 different kind of weapons, 6 different kinds of weapons for each character, because we had Aspect, Hismar, Skasa, Sparazzi, and then Culmination. So that's 5. Even though three of those weapons were literally really 4 of those weapons were literally the same across every single character. Yes, first step, thank you. So Awakening as well. The craftable weapons, I think that's an option that should still exist. I believe weren't they from 95 cap?
They were from 95.
Just 90, yeah.
They were from 95. I still have my 95 cap weapons on my spec. The ones that had interesting effects.
They were cool. They added interesting effects. They're kind of you could kind of consider them like the precursor of Culmination Weapons. But the biggest problem
also kind of the pity, because you could craft them instead of like being stuck in RNG hell.
Yeah. But the problem was just how long it took to craft them. I think it was, did someone say it was 6 or 7 weeks of using godly substances.
Yes.
Was the shortest amount of time you could craft that weapon.
I think mine took me around 14 to get.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. It was cool. I mean, like I still have the crafted weapon of my Shadow Dancer. I have it as a skin, and these daggers that drip poison. They have a purple drippy animation, and that's super cool. That is only shared by another epic that's a level 75 epic dagger. And like, I think like even the Rangers had like, I think it was called Gold Lux, and they had like a gold. Yeah, gold spectrum effect, and the gauntlet had like this green spectrum effect. These all had these cool effects attached to them. It's just acquiring them was absurd. Like it just took way too long.
There was the one totem that turned all of Monk's skills blue, like an icy blue.
Yeah, so I think that it would be cool if they brought that back, in the sense of like, these are weapons that have it's kind of a, what were the weapons from way back when that were that gave you a spectrum effect?
Legacy?
Yes, the legacy weapons. Those things, the one of the biggest disappointments with the weapon skin is that if you got one of the legacy weapons, or you got any of those weapons that had a spectrum effect, those aren't copied. It would be cool if it, like, I mean, this is going off topic, but it would be cool if it was reintroduced. But I actually really like the concept of a craftable weapon. I think it like the amount of work and time you put into it makes you feel like that weapon is more important, more valuable to you. But it just took way too long for it to actually have like an impact.
And that's if you were using godly substances the entire time.
Yeah, it's just, and even getting godly substances was really time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the game needs more options, but options that aren't so overpowering when you pit them against each other.
Yeah. And that's kind of hard part, is that like trying to balance a little bit, between the options. And well, I can see that as someone who's really looking to like game balance and stuff. But it's just like, it's gotta be hell trying to balancing like 2 very very different effects, and especially when consider like the niches and like the situation too. It's just like really hard to balance them.
Never mind the number of classes the game has.
Like, yeah, I got forbid. 63 classes, I think, or
65.
65 classes. I say 65 classes now. Like, it's hell to trying to balance all of that.
It's why this skill this whole skill functionality change that they're planning to do is a far bigger task than I think some people may realize, because you're changing everything that defines a character. You're changing how the whole thing operates. if you mess up, it's not. Hopefully they don't, but it could be the case that one class just slips through the cracks and ends up getting such a poor like skill functionality change that becomes unplayable and people just leave the class in droves. You've just given one aspect of your community just a major blow in their ability to have fun with a game.
Bro, like what Afro is saying, man, like they took his legs. I know that feeling as someone who played an Infinite Shadow Step SA back all the way in 100 cap. I took my time building that character so he could have 2.1 second Shadow Step cooldown. The reward was worth it. I didn't do too much. I didn't do any sort of damage whatsoever, but I was permanently invulnerable for the rest of like Ozma until they took away his legs.
Yeah,
which was his iframes.
It's just like yeah, that, and then they also like add like cap on cooldown too. It just cook everything. So just gone.
So I totally know what it's like to experience it, and I don't really want to experience that again.
Yeah.
But you know, that's what they're going to do with like the skill. They'll shake up the entire thing because we, as much as like some of us love how the skills operate right now, there's a lot of deep-rooted problems in it, and it's fine if they fix it. But we don't know how they're going to fix it, which is what's causing a whole lot of apprehension.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that like they just need to be very upfront about. We're gonna change if they just need to state what they plan to do to give characters more like how the character. But what's the word I'm looking for? Character identity. What they need to be upfront about what they're changing for character identity. Like, for example, look at Male Ranger that has, for some godforsaken reason, has an iframe on Punisher that he can just use whenever. But if you look at Female Ranger, she has no iframe.
Zero iframe.
Literally like, zero. Outside of Awakens.
Yeah,
right.
Like,
if you look at
just like re-dying on the Ranger too, just like, bro, just have it. Yeah,
you can't even fucking use their equivalent of like Punisher.
Spriggan
doesn't.
Yeah, Spriggan does not. Because he has to grab. He has to grab something to get the iframe, but. You know, most of nowadays don't not get grabbed. So
right. The backstep upgrade is what gave a lot of characters their only iframe. But like you look at Impaler, who was originally given a lot of skills that he could use from the air, and he's the ranged Lancer who's supposed to be attacking from range and attacking from any area, and Dragoon has more aerial attacks than he does. Like they need to kind of be very clear about what their character identity is intended to be, and like that is a major factor in why people will play a certain character. And that's going to, I think that's going to have a major impact on how people will play, what characters people will be playing in the new cap or the new season. Because if they change certain characters too much, though no one's going to want to play that character. The people who play that character currently are not going to play that character again. So yeah. I'm gonna see what Jappy and Rojas have to say.
Yeah, Rojas has been typing a lot. Oh, there we go.
They were able to showcase as a pretty good president. Almost all the skills changes they previewed were skills this class did not use at all. Yes. MX70 skill going from a skill that can never get full damage to an auto tracking skill that just becomes free damage at any time.
Yeah, I personally really like new change for his video. Like that's great. Like the skill sub is actually pretty good. Well, on paper, but the issue is that it missed. If you don't have a talisman, that thing will miss like 9% of the time. If anything, it's probably more like 99% of the time. And it's just really difficult to use it. And so if you actually max it, but you have to pair up with a talisman to even make it sort of usable, because the thing still misses. Because if the boss just decide just teleport behind V0, well, the thing missed anyway. But in the case of like new changes is great for looks of it, and
Yeah.
I'm actually like kind of like Rizzo, but it just kind of sucks that like Minecraft is just a bit too good too, like but way especially nowadays where like enemies are like pretty nimble and like moving a lot. It just make it difficult to try and use his like 7 days ago.
I hope, personal hope is that they change VMX Frisbee to be much better, because that's my favorite skill.
Oh yeah, Frisbee. Yeah, Frisbee is just I don't know. Talisman just feels like it's not.
It doesn't really
like,
change
Doesn't
much.
do
it's
anything. That's
No,
what
just
it,
like,
yeah, that's it's a
that much
perfect
for
example.
desire.
It's just a talisman that doesn't do anything.
Yeah, basically it's like it has like comfort tracking or like the thing can already cover so much that like you don't need tracking to begin with. So like what's the
they
point?
increase Frisbee's range anyway. It hits everything on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not so like this like entirely this doesn't actually solve the issue. Well, I mean like it's just trying to fix an issue that's like not even there. So it's kind of pointless.
All the unpopular classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wake
A lot of
up,
classes just that they really need like we need changes and just kill our improvements. But like at this point, just kind of like playing Ari's point where we like well like 65 classes we got so far. We just got you just basically got get lucky like after like every 3 months for the reworks and
They do
just
let
kind
us
of reality
skip
things.
leveling. It's called leveling quick, fast leveling event.
Yeah, I mean like jump event. I'm basically with that to just skip the leveling.
I don't
Yeah.
think us veterans need more characters. That's just my take on it. As someone who has like 34 of them who are above 58k.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I always just been waiting for a jump event just to raise someone.
Yeah.
Yes, that's also another thing that would be too abusable by bot accounts.
Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly why they took out. They used to have that as a permanent feature on KDNF. You're just limited by how many fast leveling ults you can have per month, and then they axed it because bots were abusing it.
Yeah, bots is also an issue too. So it just kind of cooked that like it's some people always want to use a lot of things, but it's how this.
But yes, I do hope that like whatever rework they have in store, they actually provides communication and let the player base give them appropriate criticism. Yes,
Like-
he's giving it. Give. Yeah, I was gonna say that, but I just held on.
Guns. Yeah,
Hey,
that one's.
That's another topic that like I feel like this would be a good opportunity for them to restore some of the skills they removed. I'm sure that we would all like the fifth female gunner to be revealed at some point, but I don't think, like personally, I don't think a new class is in their like even remotely like within their like consideration because of all these skill changes. Maybe
They
though.
make sure.
I would ride if like I would ride if the fifth F gunner is not a medic. Like come on, bro. Like we really need like it's just such a missed opportunity to not have that as a class.
Yeah,
But
Rojas makes a good point. They brought back Neil as a Demon Slayer player. I would like to see Predator Galua. I'd like to see my eyeballs back.
That would be so much fun.
Or I'd like my purple goop back. Give me back Blood Mungeon. But like, yeah, I think like they have a pretty great wealth of kind of things they can do with this skill system, and just really hope they kind of follow what they've been doing in other games like First Ascendant and I believe in the finals. Not 100% sure, but like that they just look at the fun factor and go with that first rather than going with like what is safest, and just looking to see what would give people the most fun to just play their characters. So I'm hoping that's something that they're considering or that they're focusing on when they look at these changes. Like Rojas said, the changes to these skills that they previewed, some of them look kind of crazy. Like Elemental Bomber's Thunder, what is it?
Lightning wall.
Lightning Wall becoming a big old box. That just looks funny. Like Lightning Cube, that just looks funny, but it also looks like a ton of fun.
Okay, but remember that's like the base ranges, right? And you saw that it covered the entire screen.
Yeah.
So if you had like skill range increase, which I don't think is ever gonna go away now that people have gotten a taste for it, yeah, that looks fun, and I really hope that they sway towards more fun than actual. Oh, but you know we need to keep balance.
Yeah. Well, that's the big hope. If they plan to make things balanced around solo, or they plan to make the content balanced around either like challenging content, solo content, group content, fun factors should be considered first, and the factors of like what is good for a raid environment, that should be considered, but that shouldn't be the forefront of how they design, like how they redesign skills for characters.
Well, I mean, if they were open at doing that, then the homogenization patch wouldn't have been a thing years ago. I don't know if the Opal has changed since then, but it kind of
because of
feels
like
like
the
they
old
haven't.
directors. If you gotta remember, they always like switch around directors. Right now we have a current director who is willing to shake up this thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, well, I am gonna call it here because we've been at it for, what's my recording say? 3 hours and almost 30 minutes. It's gonna be a big old video. Yeah. Thank you everyone who participated, who's been here for the entire time. I really appreciate your time here. Thank you, Des, Freecom, Tomaki, and Mezza for speaking and being active participation. Thank you everyone just for participating in the chat, everyone who participated there. Really appreciate it, because this is the kind of, again, this is the way that we tell Neopal that we have, that our community has a voice. Thank you.
If you don't mind me like making a suggestion to like the format of this,
sure.
If you're planning on like recording, if you're going to be like recording all of these episodes, maybe it would make sense to have like the Discord chat as an overlay in your stream too. So, or whatever it is you're recording.
It has, so what I'm recording has the video. It shows who the speakers and audience are. I've been just scrolling up and down on that a bunch. But the chat has been in full view the entire time.
Oh, okay.
So I'm more than likely going to just upload this 3.5 hour video raw to YouTube. Just, or at least try to. I'll have it up by the end of the month. But it's been a while. But I'll make sure to like add chapters in so that people can like jump to certain points. But in general, just thank you for everyone who participated. Thank you for providing your voice. Hopefully Neo pays attention to this, and yeah.
Thank you for hosting this. Yeah,
hosting
this conversation too. Yeah, we're open to hear about you. So.
Yep. So okay, all right. Well, thank you everyone, and.